No, actually, this isn't burnout. I'm fine. This is fun. It's still enjoyable. I just recognize that it's my time to pass it on.
Hook, hypothesis, evidence, evidence, evidence.
Top or bottom, left or right.
Twist, conclusion.
Anyhow, revenue.
We lost over 250 grand.
Wow.
I don't understand how you do that.
What goes into a deal like this? Interest, taxes,
and...
Did you have that thought?
Oh, AI?
That's crazy.
Is there a moment where you're fully out? Today on the Colin and Samir Show, we're joined by MatPat and Stephanie. They're the creators of Game Theory, Food Theory, Style Theory, Film Theory, and GT Live. And across those channels, they have over 41 million subscribers on YouTube. They started this journey over a decade ago when MatPat was uploading lo-fi video essays with his theories about video games. Fast forward to today, and they put out 11 videos a week, and MatPat is involved in every single one. Now, MatPat and Stephanie came on the show to talk about a first-of-its-kind moment that made waves across the platform. And in this conversation, we talked to MatPat and Stephanie about how they structured their company, how they sold the company, and how now they're retiring from YouTube while keeping their channels alive. Before we get into the conversation, we want to tell you about spending a week with Mr. Beast, Ryan Trahan, Eric, Dude Perfect, and a bunch of other top creators. It was a week-long event in Montana that we helped put together with our partners at Spotter, and it was the second annual Spotter Summit. We got to hear from experts like J.J. Abrams and Dr. Peter Attia, as well as just hang out with each other and spend time together. Now, one of the coolest parts of the event was the Spotter team demoing their new AI tools specifically designed to help creators brainstorm. All right, I'm going to show you how some of these tools work. This is Idea Generator. It's where you can take a title or a concept and get variations of that title and then actually get illustrated mock-ups of thumbnails that can give you an idea of how this video could come to life. You can also go straight to Thumbnail Explorer and just type in title ideas and see illustrated mock-ups for thumbnails. This really helps conceptualize your ideas and have a better understanding of what you would shoot or design for your packaging. And this is a tool I've been using a lot. It's called Idea Workshop. It's where you can put in an idea and actually build out the structure of a video from the storyline to the B-plot to the hook. So thanks to Spotter for sponsoring this episode. And if you want to check out the tools, go to spotter.com/Colin and Samir. All right, now for our conversation with MatPat and Stephanie. All right, MatPat and Stephanie Pat?
Wow.
Oh man, we've
Steph
already tapped into the main problem that
There's
exists
a lot
here.
of controversy about this. So
Let's dig in.
I don't have a moniker like that. I don't have a short rhyming moniker, but some people who we know have actually just sort of given up and gone with MatPat. And one time I've gotten Steph Pat. I've gotten all sorts of things. One time I got Pat, which I hate deeply, but I also leaned in on. And so in certain groups of people who we hang out with now, that is my name, unfortunately.
Pat?
Pat.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just in order to continue the cadence. Yeah.
No Steph.
No Steph. Unfortunately, no Steph. I don't get to keep any, and Patrick obviously is not one of my original names.
Sure, of course.
Believe it or not, this is going to come as a surprise.
My name wasn't originally
no
Patrick.
biological connection.
We're not siblings, as the internet also deeply suspects.
It's all right. The internet suspects we're married.
Yeah.
I think you make a
top
beautiful
search
couple,
on
honestly.
not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, but
We
you're
don't-
such a cute couple.
I think everyone thought we slept in bunk beds
Yeah.
in a single room.
Oh, that's cute.
That makes sense.
No, they're spooning
you have
together.
Like
It's a nice vision.
You have
Yeah,
a Jimmy Donaldson bunker somewhere, right? Where you guys, you have your bunk beds and then you roll out into the rest of the office,
it's attached
right?
to this studio and we just come under the tunnel.
And
Exactly.
Elon Musk observes you from high,
Yeah, exactly.
over your bed.
No, but I didn't get to keep it anyway. So it's just Pat. No, but Stephanie is, or Steph or any of those that you prefer. The internet has given me lots of funny monikers over the years.
Well, how are you guys doing? Because you are retired.
Not yet.
Okay, but you're close.
We're working on it. When does this episode air? Are we retired? Is Matthew retired?
You'll be close.
Yeah,
okay.
You'll be
but
close.
not
But
quite.
there's also a potential someone's watching this and you're
Sure.
a year retired. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
That's true.
Will you be almost retired? You're also like the conversation of YouTube at the moment.
No, thank you.
Every day, at
would've
least in
thought?
this moment, a new video comes out that's like on YouTube retirement.
Yeah. No,
How
totally.
wild is that? That's super interesting, I think.
I think, so to answer your first question, how's it feel? Great. It feels good at this point as we're filming it to be in an end game and to see an end in sight. One that's been a long time coming and one that we've been prepping for years at this point. So there's a sense of freedom to that, but also, like I said, it's not the end by any means. We are still working behind the scenes. We're still working on a lot of really exciting projects that are for our audience and for the fan base. And it's a new opportunity to learn. And I think that's the biggest thing about all of this is we're excited to open the door to new projects that get us learning again. We've been in YouTube doing videos for the last 13 years, and we know it really well. We know the algorithms, we know optimization, our audience. We've covered every IP under the sun. And it's one of the,
like a new day.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool because it's a new day.
Like the emotion is relatable, but the experience is very rare.
Mhm.
We don't know many stories, if at all, of creators who sell their channels completely, 100%.
Yep, 100%.
And then come up with a way to get off the channel. Like the core, you know what I mean?
We've devised it,
the core motto of YouTube is like broadcast yourself.
Yeah, right.
Inherently, it's not scalable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it is tricky, right? And that goes to probably a whole nother conversation, which is how the channel operates.
Yeah.
Right. And the way that we've always seen the channel operating, where we've always seen it as there being 3 hooks in the wall, right? There are people who watch our channel because they like me as MatPat. They like me as a host. He's funny, he's wacky, he's relatable, whatever. Then there's the other hook in the wall of they like the format. They like the show of theory.
They like the predictability of, opening line, hook, hypothesis, evidence, 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 twist, conclusion. That is every single episode. It's extremely predictable. Every single time it has the exact same format. It's comforting. It's a lot of people's comfort content as well. It's reliable. It's produced every single week with no breaks for the last decade. So you can always count on it being there, right? So there's the format. And then there's one other.
And then the third one is the IP that we're talking about or the subject matter that we're talking about, right? Like people who might not know what theorizing is or might not know kind of the structure. They don't know who I am, but are interested in the topic, right? Like I wore edible underwear and what's that like? Or let's talk about Lethal Company, the video game.
Yeah, they're really big fans of Gravity Falls, the animated show from Disney, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just love this IP. I remember this IP, or I want to know more about this IP. Let me watch this particular episode. And so they're sort of, these revolving door viewers who are there for the episodes that they're really interested in. Maybe they duck out for a few, maybe they're back for some, that kind of thing. And there's always something to sort of bring people back no matter what reason they're coming in for.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about it, right? Is that idea of, yes, one of those hooks goes away with our departure, but the other 2 hooks remain and hopefully sustain and continue. Well, a new hook kind of finds its footing and finds their audience and finds their unique voice within the format, and it grows from there.
Do you have the inverse hook personally? Like your days for a large portion of your life have been anchored by your connection to this audience.
Sure.
And I thought about that while watching your goodbye video. 18 million people on this day have watched that.
Yeah.
And it'll be more over the next week or so.
Yeah.
Like there is an inverse to being a YouTuber that actually we talked about with Brittany Broski, and I think Hank Green did an episode on that, calling it the Sarapocial relationship, like the opposite, right?
Yeah.
The inverse of the parasocial relationship, that like you've been hooked into them.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. And
you can't not be.
You can't not be.
There's no way, I don't think there's any way to work on the platform and not feel
right.
that,
well,
right?
and that's that's why that announcement video and this decision is so hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm crying so much throughout that announcement video, to be honest, right? Like so much.
That was the
crying.
3rd time he tried to record that video as well. And that was probably the least tears. The first one was just
sloppy. It was pretty wet and sloppy for sure.
Honestly, though, good looking cry. Because as I watched that, I was like,
thanks.
I don't think I can cry like this.
I
cry.
It's not bad.
My eyes get all puffy. My face turns red.
A lot of snot when I cry.
Wow.
And a lot of a lot of stuttering.
I do have very narrow nasal cavities, so that's probably why the snot doesn't flow.
Which was optimal for that video.
I've been primed for that for years.
That's a requirement for retiring.
Just make sure you have what is it, the deviated septum, so that nothing goes through your nasal cavities at all, and you're great. Yeah, he doesn't have any snot.
You introduced there is the classic YouTuber apology video. Yeah. But you introduced now probably the model for the retirement video.
Thank you.
That's what it looks like when you, it was also odd that it was a week of announcements, right?
Yeah.
Is that just, I guess, turn of the year? Like, did you talk to Tom Scott? And
Yeah, he and I
Were you like,
coordinated. We're like,
"Hey,
let's
Tom,
start a super trend on
let's-
YouTube.
yeah, let's
let's
do
do this. Him
Matt
and I.
Diavella.
Yeah, I'm actually
like,
glad that you
just-
said that it set the bar because we were very worried after the Tom Scott video. We were like,
Right.
dang it.
I mean,
Just
Tom
set
Scott
the
He
bar
ended
got
the
it.
so
Tom Scott
high.
video
Yeah.
getting in the hot air balloon,
Right.
Helicopter.
whatever it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
like floating off into the
How do
sunset.
you follow that? We had a conversation that
With
night. We were
tears.
like, oh,
Yeah.
shoot.
Yeah.
You
Like,
only-
what are we
you
doing?
can only
With-
follow it with tears.
With
Yeah.
sincerity and love. Thank you. No, we were a little bit worried that like, oh man, are people gonna think that this decision is coming because someone else did it? And it's like, no, this has been years
I can
in the
vouch
making.
because we talked about it. Yeah.
Right. We've talked about it
for
for a long time. And
yeah.
I mean, we did a speech about how to exit YouTube back in 2019.
Yeah, no one knows this, but we did a keynote on the VidCon industry stage back in 2019, which was the first time we were thinking about this. Like, this is how far back this just discussion goes. Not even like necessarily actions around it, but our son was born in 2018, and in 2019 we were like, what are we gonna do long term? Like, really. And I'm sure you guys have had that. You have families. You've talked about this, right? Somewhere behind the scenes, you've talked about
For sure.
what are you going to do? What are you going to be doing in 10 years? Like, how is this story going to unfold for you? And that's when we first started thinking about it, really. And in 2019, we gave this keynote at VidCon about like, okay, these are the ways that YouTubers can exit. And they're exactly the same ways that we talked about literally last week. They can kind of just like, fizzle out on the platform. You get to the point where you don't need to do it anymore or whatever, but you just kind of keep doing it and your fan base kind of slowly whittles away. Not any fault of your own, just nothing stays popular forever, right? You can sell your business, or you can, just decide one day that you're going to stop uploading, right? And in order to know how you're going to exit, our whole point back in 2019 was that as you are building a YouTube channel, and that was what everyone is interested in. No one wanted to come to a VidCon presentation about exiting YouTube in 2019. But our whole point was, as you are building your channel, as you're building your creator business, you have to know where you're going in order to get there. You don't know if you've succeeded as a creator business if you don't know what the end goal is, right? What is the ending? And so you pick your ending and then you write the story that you want to get there.
Yeah. And
that was the point.
And the way you structure your channel is going to fundamentally dictate what is and isn't available to you. I mean, your first question at the beginning of this was, not many people have been able to do this. And that's because these sorts of channels that we have are very rare. You can't have a Markiplier sell his channel or have someone step in as the next Markiplier. It is, it's the same thing with the Jenna Marbles. Ray William Johnson back in the day had =3. And that was
probably
very
the same for us.
Yeah, very
for
much
a channel
so.
called Colin and Samir.
Right. Yeah. When it's tied to your name and personality, you can't do that. But
we
when
were
it's
just talking about how you guys you can't shave, you can't cut your hair, because then what happens to the logo?
Right.
We'd have to, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone gets
I mean,
confused.
everyone can feel, but we're in a prison right now.
I'm stuck like this.
Yeah. Everyone can feel.
you don't get to choose your facial hair, right? But I want to choose my facial hair, right? And so it's one of those things where, we early on, because we're older than dirt, right? Like, we've been around for 13 years. We've been consulting YouTube channels. And
When you
big
say
brands
that,
and
though,
stuff.
we're kind of in the same age
Oh, no, I
category,
know.
so we have to say that now too.
I own that I'm older than dirt. You don't have
You
to.
don't have to. You
I
guys
just
are so
accept it.
fresh-faced and
It's
beautiful.
right on my face, so it's what can you do? I got a gray beard.
Right. But it's one of those things like, we've been thinking about and analyzing and consulting YouTube channels, brands, big businesses in the space for over a decade, right? And overanalyzing everything since our earliest videos. That is how this business has become what it was. And at a certain point early on, we recognized the value of having a format that's personality driven. Because when you break down content, it's either a format or it's personality, and the personality gets audience loyalty. It's a hook in the wall. It's the thing that people relate to. I like that host. I like their style. But the format is the thing that gives it longevity and can live on beyond that personality, right? And so in the earliest days of game theory, back when that was the only channel, it was pure format. I did not insert myself at all. Like, I was there and I was the host, but there weren't personal stories. I didn't appear on camera. There was nothing about me as a person. But then around the era of like, what would it have been, generation 3 of YouTube, where you started to see the Let's Players taking off and you saw the OG YouTubers really starting to grow, things like that. I'm like, oh, but there's a secret sauce here about personality as well. And it's okay for me to insert myself into this. And it's okay for me to suddenly be a part of this narrative as well. Let's put those two things together and kind of grow as a unit.
I just, out of pure curiosity, when I watched your goodbye video, I thought, why not do like a voice clone?
Oh, AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have that thought of like keep MatPat's voice?
I mean,
because a large portion of the videos, you don't need to be on camera.
Right.
And it like when I thought about what's done really well, it is the research, the writing, the pacing. There's like a DNA that could be replicated.
Yeah, I'm the weakest part of the episode. I'm just garbage. Please, the formats will do better without me, to be honest. No, like there was thoughts. I mean, you think through all the different possibilities. I mean, Steph and I are nothing if not overthinkers. That kind of goes with the territory, right? Overanalyzers, looking at all the different kind of like long-term ramifications of things. But I mean, one of the big parts of this decision is not wanting to just become talent. And like every script I touch and every script I approve and every script I have polished to my voice and has passed a certain level of research that I understand and trust from our team. So that way it's not just me as a mouthpiece. And it's really important for me, and I think for online creators, but especially the Theorist brand, of like, hey, we are actual humans here, and we are doing this, and it is still us on the couch, and I am representing this research that I have done, and I'm a trustworthy source to you, right? And one of the reasons why it's like, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to just stand here and speak the words of other people. It's like that doesn't feel true. That doesn't feel authentic, right? It's such a buzzword in the YouTube space that it's so played out. But I mean, there is no denying that it works, and that it is really, again, the heartbeat of what makes a channel and an online brand work. And so if my team is doing most of the research, and if Lee is doing all that film theory, and if Tom is doing all the game theory, and Amy's helping supplying with the style theory stuff, like they should be the ones representing that at this point. Like this is their show, and I'm just a filter for it. I'm just a front. And they deserve, and they've earned the right to step forward and kind of take that place for themselves.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any news anchors, right? Like YouTube shouldn't be a place where there are news anchors and you're just getting fed lines or getting fed stuff off of a teleprompter. And that's one of the things that we've actually hammered home to them as well, because we have this we have this like team that's much bigger than we could have ever imagined a team that we would have. And we have our creative directors who are like ready. They're like eager. They're like ready to step up to this plate. And behind them, we also have a support team of writers as well. And for a long time, we didn't have any of that, right? And so one of the things that we've also really instilled onto the creative directors is, hey, never lose your voice here. And we have a great team of writers and they do excellent research, but that doesn't mean that whoever is speaking those words shouldn't have touched every script and have had their voice really come through. And so when we're talking to them about, sort of words of wisdom for as they go forward and they continue to become more and more autonomous in these roles, is don't lose yourself and don't compromise yourself and your voice, because that's what audiences respond to. They care that Lee loves guitar picks and collects them, and that Amy is like a D&D aficionado. Like that's the kind of stuff that people latch onto. That's not something that some writer can just like put a generic joke in there for you. You have to be able to tell authentic stories about yourself. And that's what makes you a trustworthy person for everything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned before the what was it, the Sarapocial? What the reverse of parasocial? The
Sarapocial.
Sarapocial. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
but I mean, like that is, again, would it be easy for me to just offload the responsibility to an AI voice, or let other people handle all that work? And do I get those hours of my life back? Yeah, but I have a responsibility to our audience to take care of them and to make sure that the content that they're being delivered is of a certain quality and is going to be entertaining and educational to them, and something that is made with love and fandom and support and enthusiasm. And that is a guiding ethos. And that's that reverse, that Sarapocial relationship with them. That's what I owe them, because they've trusted me with their view and with their support for all these years.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have been on this platform for a long time, right? Retirement? Anytime? What are your thoughts? Can YouTubers retire, and will you do it?
So I have this thought all the time that when we sold our first channel, so we sold Lacrosse Network, it was inside of another company. That was around the time where I started dating my current wife, and our relationship got to the point where we got engaged. And I don't think that would have been possible had we not sold the company. meaning
Sure.
like
Yeah.
my time and space,
Yep,
right?
100%.
And now as I start thinking about building a family,
Yeah.
the thought creeps in again of like,
Mm,
well,
Yep.
if I'm to be a dad,
Yeah.
do I have the time and space for that?
Mhm.
And this version of us on YouTube is very different from that version of us.
Sure.
That was like early days, couldn't figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
And now there's more stability. We have a team, we have a format. But that thought does come into my head for that reason.
Mhm.
And then the other side is also the desire to produce other projects.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're making a YouTube channel, you are feeding the format. And you're all in on the format. And I feel so fortunate we have a format where I get to be myself.
Yeah.
I just sit and have a great conversation with interesting people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a wild gift. But I have a lot of aspirations to produce other things.
Yeah.
So those are the two thoughts that come in my head. I don't anticipate it happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because this is very fun and the reward is getting to sit across from people who inspire us. So it's kind of like,
where are they?
Yeah.
oh, they're back.
Everyone's
Yeah.
left.
Sorry.
They're next.
Sorry, they're
Oh,
coming
good.
in
Okay.
next.
Okay, good.
I don't know. Do you think
Yeah.
about it?
We won't
Yeah,
hold
of course. I think about it all the time. But in watching everyone's retirement videos, I felt a lot of fear of like, oh, I'm not ready to do that because I don't even know what's on the other end of that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That tells you. I mean, that gives you your answer.
Yeah,
though.
that's
If you
your
feel
answer.
fear, then
Yeah.
then like the answer is
No,
no.
I'm
for you.
I'm
That's
like
great.
happy, where
Yeah.
we are. But I have, it would scare me to leave just from like a lifestyle perspective
Mhm.
of like, I don't know many other lifestyles. I don't know
Right.
what I would fill my head with.
Sure.
I like the feeling of looking at our YouTube channel
Uh-huh.
and being like, look at all those things we did.
Yeah.
There they are,
Uh-huh.
just like listed.
And they
Right.
do lead to really
And they've led
weird,
to interesting
bizarre,
things.
cool experiences.
Interesting experience.
But I do miss,
Interesting experiences.
there have been times when we've worked on things that are very finite. Like it's a
Mhm.
project we work on for a period of time, we do it, it's over. I don't
Yeah.
think about it ever again.
Yeah.
And Hank Green said something in a video today about retirement. He
Yeah.
said that creativity used to be delivered in discrete units
Mhm.
of like,
Mhm.
there's the song, there's the album,
Yeah.
there's the movie.
Yeah.
And now he just sees it as this, especially with YouTube creators, it's just this long thing.
Yeah,
that even
marathon.
if-
Continuum.
He says, even if someone says
Absolutely.
they retire, it's still going. It's
Yeah.
still living on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Right.
the
And
foundations
you
that
might
YouTube
still
put
show
in
up in a
place.
video.
Sure, every
you
once in
might
a while.
still
Yeah.
make a video. Yeah,
It's still going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think it leaves, like, it's such a cool platform because it leaves the door open for other projects. Just because you retire from one doesn't mean you have to retire from everything forever. He's retiring from the host of these channels. That's a very specific thing to retire from,
Yeah.
actually.
Have you heard Marquez's octopus
Yes.
analogy?
Yes.
Yes.
I think his video was fantastic. And I love his octopus analogy.
Yep.
That you're kind of like cutting off one
Right.
part of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
But I do think in this in this whole moment in time where these retirement videos came out, I started doing some writing around it. And I really did think about the fact that I think you do retire from being a creator the day you start building your media company.
Yeah.
Once you start hiring and scaling and starting to make the thing bigger than what it was to be a creator.
Yeah.
Because
Because you're not the creator anymore. You are the manager.
manager.
well, you
at that point.
added
Is that what
this
you mean?
job that is
Yes.
so different
Yeah.
Yes.
that comes with like the amount of stressors that it comes with as it gets bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
Are so different from when we would come up with an idea and sit next to each other, and
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
be like, he would take a break from editing for a second. I'd hop in and put in a song,
Yep.
and I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, that song works really well. And then
Right.
head come back and be like, dude, look at this song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god,
yeah.
that song does work. Oh,
Yeah.
I got an idea. And he would sit down, and that version of
Mhm.
us,
Yeah.
we retired from that version of us.
Right.
That does not exist.
Oh,
Right.
I feel
Right.
that so much.
Yeah.
Actually, I
Yeah.
feel that like in my stomach or something. I have memories of like Matthew and I in our first like 6 months of working full time together after we had quit our jobs and stuff, of like just sitting next to each other, like thinking up the tags for a video and like thinking up the title
Totally.
and like trying
Mhm.
different stuff with titles of videos and then just like being there together and hitting publish. And I'm like embarrassed to say how long ago that was. That was so long
And
ago that
refreshing
things were
and
that
seeing, like,
simple.
Dude, look at this comment that
Yeah.
came in.
Yeah.
That's
No,
interesting.
absolutely.
Or like, oh, like I can't believe like how much the Twitter has grown, or like, oh, these live stream comments are crazy, and being that close to it is it's really awesome and special, and it feels much more simple, you know.
As part of this kind of final stretch of videos that we're doing right now, it's been really nice to have a chance to revisit a lot of
to
those
come back to
moments.
being
So,
there.
you know, for that announcement video, I was digging through old emails with Lee and Ronnie and Ryder and some of our early editors on the channel, and looking at like, yep, back before there was Framio and, you know, all these text solutions for notes, I literally would just write pages and pages of notes in the
Did you
videos.
say Framio?
I say Framio, and anyone who
Frames.io.
says frame.io, it's
I
It
don't
makes
say
me
the
so
dot.
sad.
We say
Frame.io.
we just say Frame.io.
Frameo. Frameo is the way to go.
Frameo?
I love Frameo.
Frameo.
It's so much better.
Frameo.
Frameo.
Try it. Just try it.
Try it out.
I
Try
don't-
it out.
I don't
Where
even
do you
know-
upload your videos to
I gotta
and
be
give
honest,
notes?
I don't even know what the rest of the sentence was. I heard Frameo and I was like,
Same.
Did it feel good to say
I can't go any further than that.
I was like, I'm so sorry, but
Anyone
like
who ever
easy.
I know you're
inherits
getting to a good point, but I need to stop you at Frame.
Yeah, okay.
everyone who inherits an editor from us ever will get an editor who says Frameo.
we will never.
We'll never hire.
Why?
We will never.
Yeah.
If it says Theorist Media, we'll be
You're
like,
Frame.io?
missing out.
Yeah.
Frame.io.
Why
Frameo.
you're taking too? It's a poorly optimized phrase.
Okay, this
What
is
do they
so,
say?
This is
What's
so
meant-
niche,
what is it meant
by the
to
way.
be?
Kid, what were you saying?
Because
I don't even
Frameo like
know.
flows, right?
Yeah.
Frame.io is like 3 very distinct syllables, which
Yeah.
are just not
Wait,
elegant.
Please, what were you talking about?
Anyway,
please
I was,
tell me what you were saying.
Anyway, throughout this whole process and going back to
Yeah.
that simplicity, right, of those early days, it's been so nice to revisit where we were writing emails, like literal
Yeah.
emails back and forth of like, here are the 100 bullet points that I have for notes on all
Yeah,
the different
yeah,
time
yeah.
codes because the
Yeah.
technology didn't exist, right? Or even earlier this week, before we got here, we were in Texas filming with just like a skeleton crew of like
Yeah.
some of our long-term employees just kind of like bootstrapping it like we did in the early days of like, hey, let's shoot some tanks and analyze
Totally.
like video game physics and do it that way. And it's been so nice to kind of take a week here and take some time away from being a
Yeah.
manager, being in meetings, strategizing about business, business strategies and this and that.
That's still happening between 11 p.m. and
No, it
course,
still
of
is,
course,
but it's
yeah.
been nice to afford myself that time
yeah.
and prioritize and get back to that and be like,
those
oh,
are
I missed
different-
this.
Oh,
They're
I missed
different.
that.
They're different jobs.
Oh,
right?
very
And
much
like,
so. Yes.
Colin and I, when we made that docu piece on Mr. Beast Burger,
Yeah.
we just flew to Jersey, just the two of us.
Yeah, that's great.
And we just held cameras. And it was this weird, like, oh my God, this is the thing we did.
Yeah.
We held cameras and we showed it, like, we'd go up to each other and show each other the shots we got. And we just, it's a very different job
Yeah.
to be that
Mhm.
person. And I think there are days where I think about, and even as I was hearing all these retirement videos, I was like, the thought that comes into my head is like, is there a day where I'll retire from being the head of this
Yeah.
and move back into putting a camera in my hand and
Yeah.
editing? And from the outside, someone who's not unfamiliar with our jobs
Right.
would be like, that is, you
Yeah, why
are,
aren't you
you're
doing it?
making
Yeah, yeah.
videos. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or just grab a camera and go
Right.
make some
Why
stuff.
not?
But
Yeah.
it is,
Sometimes
it
I
is,
think
yeah.
about that. I'm like, I have cameras everywhere here.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Like,
You have more cameras than ever.
yeah, more cameras
and
than
less
ever.
time to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
more editing software than ever and
Right.
computers and like just
Right. And
there
you-
was a time where it was just like Colin's laptop and we were sitting,
Right.
you
No
know, and-
office. Just,
yeah. And that's what I think is a big conversational point around retirement
Yeah.
is what are we retiring from?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what jobs did we pick up along the way
Mhm.
that now we're trying to shed?
To impact down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, strip away.
Absolutely. No, I think that's crucial. Like there's been so many moments where like we've just been so distracted by the many other responsibilities that we have that we can't justify doing the creative stuff. Like
Mhm.
we can't justify spending the extra time to like just do something that's creatively satisfying because we're just so needed in so many
Yeah.
other places.
Totally.
And figuring out fewer places to be needed, I think is really nice.
Mm.
I want to ask you guys about 2018 because clearly, if you're giving a talk at VidCon a year later about exit strategies, outside of having a child, which is a huge life moment that will start making you think about the future.
Yeah.
What else went into that decision in 2018 to all of a sudden be like, oh, you know what? I think we want out, and this is going to take a while.
There are a few things that happened. One was that we had our son, which was a massive, momentous occasion, and that happened right in the beginning of the year. 4 days before we had our son, we lost one of our editors who unfortunately lost his life to suicide. And that was an incredibly tough blow on our team. And it happened, we found out about it literally like hours before we went into the hospital to have our son. And we were there, and 5 hours after delivery, we were both on an emergency phone call to our team to tell them that this had happened and to plan for what we were going to do next. And that was our experience of that moment.
Wow.
And so that was the middle of our year. And then obviously has a huge impact. We wanted to make sure that our team was okay, that we were okay. And then following that, a few months later, we were with Defy, And that whole collapse of that organization happened, right? And we lost, a good couple $100,000 when that company went under. And it was like one thing happened after another that year to just like, it was like some sort of fate just like beating us over the head, being like, figure out what really matters here, figure out how to deal with stuff, and figure out like what you're going to prioritize in life. And I think that kicked off a lot of conversations that ultimately began out of these like really tough moments where, we were like, oh man, there's a lot going on right now that we are not happy with, and that is a real big struggle. And it got us to set up priorities that have lasted and really taught us so many things coming into like the full 5 years that followed.
Well, I think all of those, like you said, it gets you to question what's important in life, right? And I think having a kid, having a family it really gets you to recalibrate kind of what it means to spend your time.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that one of my catchphrases that I go around with, and in the wake of the retirement too, is one of these things like people ask like, what are you up to? What are you up to? What's next? What's next? And one of my first answers is always, I'm so excited to just have friends who were friend employees.
We've hired all of our friends.
Yeah,
let's be real about this.
All these
Do you have
YouTube
this
businesses,
experience?
right?
Have you hired all of your friends? This is just
Actually,
us?
the first friend I hired was named MatPat, which is
Oh
crazy.
my gosh.
Yeah, there it
that's
is.
True.
Which is
Many
crazy.
years
He
ago.
was
It was me the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we learned of you, and we were like,
You're like,
What
but
a-
we have.
"Oh, we have a MatPat,
right?
Yeah,
And there was another MatPat too
Yeah,
out there,
yeah.
like early days of gaming and stuff like that. But I mean, like that's one of the I love all the people that we are so fortunate to work with, and we work with so many talented people who have been there for years on this journey with us. Some of them 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of them started as our friends. A lot of them became our friends along the way. And I am so eager to be able to dial back the workload and just be able to spend the time reconnecting with them. Same thing with my.
We've been terrible friends.
Yeah,
for
no,
like
we're
a
the
decade.
worst.
Of course.
Absolutely
Of
the
course.
worst. We've had to like cancel a million phone calls with people. We've had to be
course.
like, I'm sorry, I can't. We're filming. I'm sorry, I can't. We're
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's really hard, and we haven't been like, connected with our extended family. We haven't been connected with friends, and it's like, oh, these people still exist. And the miraculous thing is that they're still willing to be friends
Right.
with us.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
And we're like, wow, that's what an incredible gift.
There's also though the dynamic of you guys as partners. Like you're probably going to experience each other differently,
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah, we.
I mean, like I could
I
only
know.
assume
Who is-
because I find being like a YouTube creator and being a husband to be really challenging.
Mhm.
Like those two things are I have to work hard at because the amount that I call it being like you're plugged into the matrix when
Yeah.
you're on the internet, right? You're literally like
It's too easy to fill time
at
with
all
data
times.
and metrics and
Sure.
decisions and all types of things.
And
New
at all
ideas,
times,
new
you-
opportunities.
You exist on the internet at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're plugged into what's happening in that
Yeah.
space at all times
Sure.
and what you could and couldn't be doing to change things. And
Mhm.
it's an all-consuming thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
So
Yeah.
a question for you then.
Mhm.
Do you try and strike like a work-life balance?
I think we've gotten better at it now. I think on the like when you're trying to make it work, it's hard. And I imagine the early days they're all consuming in a very different way than when it's working.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like when it's not working, or even when it just starts to work, you're riddled with fear that it's about to go away, right? Or it's never going to happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a lot of the experience that we had of this anxiety of like, I think I can do this,
Mhm.
but I don't know why it's not happening. So I think I need to do it all the time and just get as good as I can, which is not conducive to go like hang out with a friend, on a Friday. To be honest, on like a Friday or Saturday, it's like, it's hard to do. You
Yeah.
just want to be working on the
I
channel.
do think one of the toughest things, and you mentioned this briefly, but is when it starts to pick up
Yeah.
and you're already exhausted because
Yeah.
you've been through years worth
Sure.
of 7 days a week, really late hours,
Mhm.
just trying to make it work. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's taken off. It's taken off. Something's happening here. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm so tired.
I
but
remember-
I gotta keep pushing.
Yeah.
I remember that time. I think I said this to Colin, but I was like, it feels like we just punched our ticket to be in the race, but we've been running for years.
Yeah.
That's
And,
yeah.
you know,
that's a good
and
That's a
like,
metaphor.
great
I like
we
that.
metaphor.
just got in. and now we have to try and win.
Mhm.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Here we go. Now it begins.
It's
This is
been
it.
10 years. And
Yeah.
like now we're in the race.
Right.
And everyone else is 21 and can dance.
Oh, yeah.
To the floss. Yeah, it's impressive.
Oh no.
Hard. Yeah.
I mean, there's all of that, yes. And there's so much to talk about when it comes to this like sort of this dance that you do and how much of a marathon
Yeah.
all of being on this platform is and how all consuming it is, right? And so I asked about your work-life balance because we gave up on that a long time ago. There is no work-life balance for us. And I think maybe for some people that is a great thing that you can strive for. For us, it was like a total fallacy. It was impossible to create a work-life balance where there was work and there was life. The only thing that works for us is a complete work-life integration. And it doesn't function. Literally, our lives absolutely fall apart if we don't work it that way. And so we do spend date nights talking about YouTube.
Of course. Yeah.
And
I understand.
there are no working hours. There are no non-working hours. There's just when the work happens and when everything else happens. And sometimes they are so closely interconnected that it's impossible to tell which one you're actually doing. But that's the only way that we've been able to function as effectively as we have for as long as we have. And I think we're pretty proud of it, but it also sounds pretty nuts when you look at it. And when you look at our schedule, it is really an unpleasant thing to look at.
What was in the height of that? What was driving you guys? Like what do you feel like you were chasing? Because some of that stuff is really hard, right? And after years and years, you examine your own life, and perceivably, you guys had even at that time have a level of financial success, right? Have a family. Like, what is driving you in that moment to keep pushing and put out that much content and work that hard?
Responsibility, right?
I
feel like that's it. I mean, you can weigh in. I'd be curious to get your take.
I feel like there's something. I feel like we should give a more concrete answer.
No.
Than this vague
No. It's so I can at least track it very clearly from era to era, right? In the earliest days, like Stephanie alluded to, it was to get me a job. Like I needed a way to prove to potential employers, like I'm smart, I can research, I can edit. Hire me because I can use analytics to create a thing that people will enjoy watching, right? Early. I got that job. And so I figured, it's time to sunset the channel. Like, achievement unlocked. I did it. Right. Time to move on. But I am a notorious completionist kind of guy. And I really thrive off of trophies and things. And so I'm like, ooh, but I could get a play button. And it's gold. And that like symbolizes some level of achievement. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to work until I get like 1 million subscribers. And then I got that. And I'm like, okay, well, achievement unlocked, did it, time to end the thing. But at the same time, the job that I got was consulting other YouTubers and teaching them how to read their analytics, how to optimize their audiences, how to work on the platform. And I had this amazing tool behind me with the channel that I could run all these experiments. For a long time, we had, back in the days of annotations, we had this thing called the Super Amazing End Card Tournament. And it was literally just me doing a bunch of experiments on the audience. And the audience was okay with this. Like, you all were fine. Like they knew this, they embraced this, right? But it was me finding out all this data collection, figuring out things about like, is the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen stronger? Top or bottom, left or right? How many arrows in the description? What do they prefer? What colors do they prefer? What do they like to click on more?
We also used to ask big meta questions like, okay, YouTube audience of 2014, when was the last time you turned on a traditional TV show? When was the last time you watched linear television? What percentage of you watch sports? What percentage of you have seen X, Y, or Z movie? And so we got a really keen like media read.
Put that in the comments, or do you guys use like polls?
A little bit of, I mean,
all of the above.
Yeah, all
Remember
of the above.
polls?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were
100%.
fun.
They were great.
That was
People
cool.
love giving their opinion anonymously.
Polls were great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, YouTube loses all the cool features.
Yeah, right. But no, we tested out all of this stuff, right? And so there was the period of time, I think this was maybe before I got the million, but like there was a period of time where doing those experiments and figuring out how to optimize things was something I was continuing to do because it was helping me with my job and be better as a consultant to everyone that we were working with at the time. And then on top of that, there was the point where it's like, well, at this point we have a large audience. I don't want to quit for them. Like I am responsible I have this relationship with them and they've trusted me to follow me on this journey and get me this job and answer all of these wacky questions and stuff. I want to be here for them and I want to continue making it for them. And then lastly, that's been the driving force for a very long time and continues to be like a heartbeat of everything. But I'd say the last layer comes in now with our own employees, right? Being business owners and making sure that we're setting up a responsible business for them.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. I think it's the responsibility piece comes in with being responsible business people, not just responsible to ourselves. And along the way, our goals changed and stuff, right? Because there was one point in time where you talk about chasing the numbers and chasing the play buttons, and I think those are such amazing incentives, and they drive they obviously drive massive motivation. But there was a point when we had to confront this idea of like, there are other channels that are going to grow faster. There are other channels that are going to have more numbers. Their numbers are going to be bigger than our numbers. And there was a very clear moment, and I think this was in maybe 2014 or something like that, when PewDiePie blew up. And we just watched him, we were right here, and he was like, beep, 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 and he just took off. And we had to sit down and have a talk because Matthew was a bit depressed about it. And so
I'm like, but I work so hard and I'm so well optimized.
And,
darn it.
And it's hard. It's hard to see, it's just hard to see all those moving pieces, right? And we had to have a conversation where we talked to each other about, are numbers the only thing that you're going to use to define yourself and define your success? If that's the case, that's crazy. Like you can't define your success as a channel and your success as a human being by whose numbers are bigger. You're never going to win that contest. And if you do, what have you won? What have you actually won there? And there has to be some other metric that you can use to define success other than subscribership. And I think that was a turning point where it went from being about, okay, let's just try and get more play buttons, to no, let's try to build something that's interesting, build something that we're proud of, and then hopefully give it a life of its own.
So at what point in the journey did you examine yourself and go, there needs to be formulas for all of these to scale? Or was that from just day one? Like the way you described the format of a theory video, you have that written down somewhere. There's some level of almost like a brand book or brand Bible of,
sure,
here's how you make one of our videos. We're going to leave, but you guys can continue this. This is what makes a good video. This is what the brand's all about.
It's in the writer's training, whether they listen to us or not. It's just up to them. I don't
Got
know.
it. Yeah. But was there a point where you you thought we need to document this and we need to be able to instruct this? Because I find that to be, amongst creators, including ourselves, one of the make or breaks of if you can do this is if you can communicate to creative people your creative vision.
Is that on me?
Yeah, I think you're the one who wrote the Bible, the brand Bible.
I did, but I think that you're building stuff and you don't know what you're doing. And so you build stuff as you go. And I wish I could be like, oh yeah, we were such geniuses that we had this master plan and we knew everything ahead of time and we were going to write it all down and it was so formulaic. So by the time we had an employee show up, guess what? It was all laid out there in front of them. It wasn't. We made up all of the roles that we hired for. When we hired a creative director, who has a creative director for a creator?
No one
has
that.
What is that?
For a while, I wanted to be one, and then I realized I have no idea.
Right,
right.
But go back to 2014. Did anyone have a channel manager in 2014? We hired one. Yeah. We made up the role. Maybe Defy had some for Smosh or something like that. I don't know.
MCN's had
MCN's had something like that, but not for individual channels probably, right? And so a lot of the roles we made up, and so a lot of the training we made up. And at some point, we knew intuitively what the formula for a theory was, but it actually wasn't that intuitive for people coming in. And we were realizing that if we were auditioning writers, the formats were all over the place. And we also didn't even have a set font for scripts until last year.
We still don't.
Until
honestly.
last year?
No, there's a style guide.
We probably
there's a style guide which I fundamentally disagree with. No one's using the same guide.
We spend 90% of our time on fonts.
Yeah,
all style guide together. If you're not using the style guide, that is on you, my friend.
I'm just saying. There's a style that works for me, and then there's a style that works for the creative directors when they take over.
Wow.
There's the him and there's everybody else.
No. But I
appreciate that.
It's good that you're out. It's good that you're out.
I appreciate that.
Here's where it came in, though, and I think that to answer the question, where it really started was you get to a point where there's only so much research that Matthew Patrick, can do in a given week on a topic, right? And as you scale the business outward and YouTube speeds up the production process and you're producing more videos at a faster rate, I want to make sure that we're still delivering a high quality of research every week, each and every time, but we're also trying to cover new trending topics that I'm not familiar with, right? When we launched Film Theory, and Marvel becomes kind of one of our tentpole pieces of content for the better part of like 6 years. I did not grow up as an avid comics reader. And so if all of a sudden you're asking me to pull from like the deep lore of Iron Man or like obscure character from Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever, and how that kind of came and went, I was not equipped to handle that. And so that's why we had all these freelance writers and researchers come in. We would audition them. We would have them come in, write a spec script, give us a sample of their research. And they would, because then all of a sudden they were coming in with the experience that I didn't have. They had better research and better knowledge of where to go and could produce theories that I would have never been able to have come up with myself because I just didn't grow up in any of those IP, right? And when you suddenly bring on a slate of freelance writers, you need a way to communicate to them like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is the format that we're working with. And I think that was kind of the era where we didn't officially write it down. We had maybe like some vague bullet points and like some vague like, hey, here's kind of the rough outline that you kind of follow. It wasn't formalized into a brand Bible or anything like that.
I don't even like that word. I don't
know.
know.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
I feel like when you put something in terms of like, oh, this is our brand Bible, and this is the only structure you can work in. I think that's really limiting for people.
Oh yeah.
The idea was to give people support, right?
Yeah.
When writers came to us and they were like, oh my gosh, I just feel so overwhelmed. Like this topic seems huge. I don't even know where to begin. What we could do is say like, okay, really though, when you break it down, like put your thesis in, put in your evidence points. There's a little twist at the end, something unexpected, and then there's a conclusion, and you got it. And they're like, oh, thank God. And then they can go away, and then they can find really cool stuff. They just needed like some kind of guardrails. So it's really about we want to put up a safety net for people. We don't want to put people in a situation where they feel constrained because no one functions well in that. Then you come out with stuff that doesn't feel real, that doesn't feel like it's a complete thought. It feels like it was just cut to fit in a certain shape box.
Yeah,
right?
and there's still bespokeness to every episode, right? Like us figuring out the secret recipe of KFC is going to look fundamentally different than me wearing edible underwear. It's going to look very different from me eating a Christmas tree to me solving the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's.
We really do all those things, by the way.
We
really eat the Christmas tree. It's it really tastes that bad.
and so within that structure, that very broad structure, there's a lot of nuance and opportunities for exploration, and the episodes don't feel samey because you are able to explore all these fun things, and there are areas in there that you're able to like mix up the intros and find new creative outlets. Again, that's the beauty of the format is if we're covering an analog horror series on Film Theory, that fundamentally affects the scripting and how it fundamentally affects the editing. And that episode is going to look and feel and sound very different from when we're covering, Bluey. Like I said, Marvel or Bluey, right? Where it's like now the colors are different. Everything is very bespoke, which has been hard. And I mean, it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, we follow a format and that has allowed us to scale, but we're still creating each and every week like a full slate of bespoke things to fit whatever the topic of the week is.
So you've mentioned freelance writers.
Yes.
How big actually is the organization? Like how many people do you feel responsibility for as you usher them into this next chapter?
Yeah.
It's grown a lot in the last year, right? So we sold Theorist at the end of 2022, so like a little over a year ago. And at that time, we had 9 full-time employees. And that was sort of on the bigger side that we'd ever been. We'd gone up and down a little bit. And then about 20 freelancers, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
And now we have 22 full-time and another 20 freelancers, right? Yeah. So it's been a huge change. And it's been a lot of like ushering people in. And we've spent a massive amount of time training people in the last year. And I think that's actually sort of a hallmark as well in terms of like feeling responsibility for people. There's feeling responsibility financially, but there's also feeling responsibility professionally. I think one of the things that has been the most satisfying about being a business owner, other than, just the accomplishment of being like, oh, I did this. Like, we're actually successfully running a business. We aren't breaking any laws. We are functioning and profitable, all this stuff, whatever.
You never know the laws that you don't know.
Like the laws you don't know.
I mean, that's a good cover, for
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, we knocked on wood.
I know.
We knocked on the wood.
But there's the responsibility for people professionally. A lot of people who come into this world, I think, and you work with a lot of creatives, you know, there's being motivated enough by money to want to cover your paycheck and live a decent life, right? But beyond that, money often isn't the biggest motivating factor for people. It's opportunity, it's responsibility, it's creativity, right?
It's cool factor.
It's a cool
absolutely, all
factor.
that.
And one of the things that I'm most proud of, just in terms of the way that we've structured the business and the way that we've grown it, is by offering people opportunity, we've been able to see the best in them.
So I think there's this, you know, the first thing I want to bring up is I think one of the biggest challenges in our industry right now is hiring.
Yeah.
Oh,
team,
sure.
and
Yeah.
team building.
Absolutely.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that is something that we're faced with. I think that might change a bit in the coming years as the crop of people who's just coming up and producing really cool stuff online realizes they don't want to be entrepreneurs and they would prefer to be a part of a team. I think that actually the workforce will change, which will be really interesting. But team building is really hard. And
It's the
everything
worst.
you're describing is like, it is a massive ingredient. If creators are watching this being like, oh man, I'd love to do something similar. Your guys' attention to detail into team building and just the dynamics of that, I think is something that cannot be overlooked because that's one of the hardest parts in a creative business. And even more specifically on YouTube, I think it's increasingly more and more challenging for people whose channel name is their own personal name. Because then you're sitting in a room and people are throwing ideas out, but that have to do with the show name that's your name.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
and that's really different than I think having like a third party show. That's just like, we all work on this show together.
Yeah.
That's very different than like, it's your channel and I'm coming up with ideas for you to do and that represent your name.
Yeah.
And I do think that is one of the biggest challenges on YouTube of scaling. Like I think, like we talked about in the beginning, like channels that are personality channels are inherently not scalable.
Right.
They just can't be.
How do you guys hire people? Do you just like hire people you know? Because for a long time, that's all we could do is hire people we knew because it was so hard to hire anyone else.
I don't even really know like how early days it happened, but like Jesse, I think is a great example of someone who took a video of us at a talk we were giving and DM'd it to us. And it was just like a really good looking video.
Yeah.
And I,
great.
Looked at the DM and I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I was like,
You want a job?
yeah, do you want to
absolutely.
film with us?
Sure.
Like that was cool.
Yep.
And it's been years, it's been, I think that was probably 5 years ago.
Yep.
I will say we always start very small. It's always like, come for one project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come for a week. Come for 3 weeks. Come for let's say a 3-month thing.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, a year passes and it's like,
yeah.
okay, like yeah.
You are de
This is
facto
great.
an employee now.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, like you are now. You're here. You're with us.
But I think there's that like, because everything you've described too, the responsibility you feel is, I think there's something very different in a creative company when you're working on a creative project because everyone's putting so much of themselves. Like when you're a creative, your identity is wrapped up in your creative work. And so with everyone putting a piece of themselves into this thing, it turns very familial very quickly, right? Like you operate in a very different dynamic than if we were building a tech startup or something.
100%.
Like totally differently. So the dynamic of the team, the culture, the energy of everyone, most of our hires have come from word of mouth or other creators.
Right? They have to.
Like they've come from other creators. Like, hey, I'm moving over here. There's this great editor that used to work with me. Or you guys like that is actually how one of our editors used to work for Matt D'Avella. When he left from LA, we were able to. And then like I like the way Matt works, so I assume if you enjoyed working with this person, we'll like working with them.
We didn't know that you could hire someone to hire people. This was a
that was a big
shocking
revelation.
It was unbelievable.
Super
Right
important.
after we were acquired, we got a hiring manager
A recruiter.
and a recruiter.
Yeah.
And she was unbelievable. So good. And she was doing things that we would have never dreamed of doing. She was
course.
going to people who had jobs. We were like, we always assume that you hire people because they're like unemployed wandering the streets and you just take them in and you're like, here, I'll give you money and you do things for me. And
That's so true.
And she was like, no, you go to people who are doing well at their job and then you poach them. And we were like, what? And so she did that, and she went out and she didn't just like post stuff on a random site, which we also can't do because like
No,
if you
you
post
can't
stuff,
do that,
you get 1,000
Oh,
submissions
yeah.
from
You
people
can't
who are 12 and who are like, I walk dogs and I think I could be your director of everything.
It's amazing how common practice it still is on Twitter all the time. I'm like, someone's hiring and there's an email.
Yes, exactly.
All right, here we go.
Whoa. And that had historically gone very badly for us. And so when we realized that there is a person and they can hire for YouTube jobs. And because we also were like, a recruiter hires for like regular people companies. They hire for like real companies, not for YouTubers. And so we'd never thought of that. And she got completely in the weeds. She got to know exactly what we were looking for. And the candidates she delivered were unbelievably high quality. And she, also had the gall to go and do things that we wouldn't do, like go to other creator businesses and be like, hey, you're working for them, but you could work for these guys over here.
I was going to ask that. Like, was she primarily looking within creator companies, or is she finding people in more traditional jobs?
Both.
A mix of everything,
Yeah, and I think at this point we're also in such an interesting time in the industry, right, where you can pull from both sides. We know people who have hired like traditional industry veterans at different, at all different levels in their company, from like the COO level, but just like producers, writers, all kinds of stuff. But then I think pulling people out of existing creator companies is actually better. So for the most part, they just already come with so much knowledge about the industry and they already watch the platform, which is so critical, right?
It's critical. And you also have to have the fluidity and flexibility in your mind.
Yeah.
Like things on YouTube change way faster, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and even in a single video, like you have to be very comfortable with that. At the 11th hour, you're like, actually, we're going to completely redo that VO. And we need a completely different graphic for that.
Wow. And completely redo the VO?
Yeah, just like, I don't know, we'll just but like that section. I'm saying that section. I was going to say not the whole thing. No, that's okay. But I'm saying there's like a section and you're like, hey, you know what? I have a different idea. Let's do it like that. And like everyone has to be on board with that's how this works. We just, if we need to punch something in, we're going to punch it in and we're going to do it differently.
Sure.
It's not as like structured. It's a lot more fluid. Creativity. Or maybe that's why our production timelines are so long. But
No, I mean, no, it's totally true. And I'm just thinking about all the times that we have videos going up on Saturday and we have to change the thumbnail because we've been working on the thumbnail all week, and then it's like, all right, it's Friday afternoon. That's not working. Yeah. And it's like, all right, we're going to change the thumbnail.
Oh, yeah, right.
And everyone's like, you can see everyone just like slowly boiling underneath.
Thumbnail.
Oh, right. Right. The crazy. Yeah.
But it happens a lot, right? And you have to be able to be like, this sucks, but we're doing it.
We're doing it. Yeah.
No, totally. But it is one of those things too, like because of how post-production heavy our shows are and because everything is animated, we had to solidify very early on what that workflow was and how to make it sustainable, and how once my VO is in, it's pretty much locked.
You're not changing the VO.
Yeah, which is why all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, all of that has to get retimed.
You tell them the VO has to change, and it's like, what?
No, you're allowed maybe a line or two here or there in an emergency situation, but for the most part, it's there, right? Wow.
But is there an ultimate like decision maker on that show? Is it you?
Yeah, I mean, it's me or it's the creative director in this case now. We also have a head editor who
that's what a creative director does.
And that is, well, and that's one of the things too, is like, there are guidelines in place to structure like, oh, you have an easy ease in, and we want to use Matt every X number of seconds, or like if you're using pre-existing video footage, you credit it this way and you do X, Y, and Z frames around it, this and that. So there are rules and structures, but there's still that like little nuance that exists there that kind of makes it a little bit spicy and different for every single person.
Because the first time on the show, we've brought up the easy ease keyframe transition. I just want to acknowledge that's kind of a big,
it's huge
moment.
That's a massive moment. That's great. But
thanks for bringing that to the table.
Yeah, of course. That's a big one for anyone out there. Easy ease. Top notch.
Easy ease. You can ease in. You can ease out.
Right. But it's also all over the place. But it's also one of those things too, where like we had to coach everyone to aim for 85%, which is a weird thing to say. Like we had
to tell them to tone them down.
Yeah, we are chronic overachievers.
What do you mean aim for 85%?
So our editors would kill themselves and work so many extra hours and like to get the perfect edit, and I need to create this entire thing in Blender and it needs to be perfection. I'm creating, this for this 30-second bit, I'm spending the next like 8 hours to craft. And it's like, I appreciate that. I love that you want to do that. And
We
that
love
is
that
why
for
you are
you.
here. Like,
But we can't
for
do that.
but for your sake
Yeah.
and for the sake of the channel and for the sake of all of us, we have to aim for 85%. Like if we got to like 85% of the way there and we're like, yes, that looks good. Like that is great. And then the next time, you know, in between uploads or whatever, that's when we kind of work. That's when we train, save that, use it in the next one, because that's how you
really good.
create that sustainability. Otherwise,
They burn out.
we would all burn out.
Does
The
that
whole
also
team burns
play
out.
into how the brand shows up? Like part of it's sustainability, part of it is the brand is a bit DIY. Like there are elements of how the brand looks from the beginning that we have retained a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And if we
100%.
go 110%
Wait.
into 30 seconds, it's going to look potentially too polished.
Oh yeah, and yeah, there's definitely a lot. There's a lot of that actually, and I don't think that surfaces a lot, right? One of the things we mentioned to you guys before we started here was that we still work out of our house. Which is people I think
Wild.
think is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah,
Is
that is
wild.
That is wild.
And we've gone back and forth over the years, right? We were in our house and we had a studio for a while out here when we were in LA. And then when the pandemic hit and everyone was remote anyway, we were like, well, everyone's just going to work remote. And we rented out the studio and we moved to North Carolina. But when we moved to North Carolina, we intentionally got a place that was big enough that we could have a whole floor and now 2 floors dedicated to studio space. And over time, as our team has grown, especially this last year, our whole house is basically just overrun with production. We live in like 3 rooms, and then the rest of our house is all just production stuff, right? And so there's a lot of complications with that. Again, work-life integration, not work-life balance.
Yeah.
It's all work-life
You're always at work,
integration.
yeah.
You're always at work.
Which is home.
Which is home. When we film that style theory video about soap and washing your legs in the shower, that was in our actual shower. You know, like there's an episode coming up where we hire a stylist and they go through our closet. Those are our real clothes. Those are my real clothes she's throwing away, right? So when you have that, you don't have to fake authenticity, right? You're not building a bedroom set and being like, oh my gosh, guys, look, here's my outfit of the day. And it's filmed in a studio. You know, you're actually in your house. And so you don't have to put on a layer of authenticity. It's actually there. And honestly, it saves time. It's efficient.
That what you just said is like, it does make it more efficient. It makes it more personal.
Yeah.
These are all things that start to get put into question as you scale.
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, oh,
Like
absolutely.
with the
Yeah,
loss of of that feel, that personal connection and whatnot.
I mean, yes and no. Like the creative directors, who are basically mini me's. Like you've been this whole time, you're like, what's a creative director? A creative director is like, they are the me for each individual channel, and they've been helping to spearhead the creative. They've been giving the notes on
They
all
stress
the edits.
out in the background a lot. So
Right.
they sit in the background and they fret.
They
I mean,
take some of the stress.
Yes.
I mean, they're YouTubers, right? They're doing all the job that I did back in the day when I had my full attention to doing that.
Yeah.
And as I've had to scale up, I've had to lose parts of that, but they are now they are the YouTubers for their individual channels, and now they're rising up to the area where it is their channels now. For the last year, I've been saying, hey, these are your channels. When these are your channels, when you are the host of these channels, they are yours. And so you're right that me stepping away loses some of that authenticity, but it doesn't, because now all of a sudden it's
just somebody else's
It's going to be filming in
authenticity, right?
Amy's bathroom now, and it's going to be filming in Lee's
Good
or
luck to
Santi's
her.
kitchen.
It's
You know?
like a huge X factor for being able to sell to Lunar X.
Of
Yeah.
course. Of
Like
course.
that's
Yeah.
that role alone, actually, a creative director.
Yeah.
So that role, the way Jimmy has talked about this
Sure.
when we've talked to him, is that the only way to train that role is they have to shadow him for years.
Mhm.
Is that how those roles have come together and like how they've gotten up to speed? Is just like, there's going to be a period of time you're just going to have to watch me do it?
I mean,
There are
I
a
would
few
s-
things.
I would say, I mean, first off, pretty much all of them have been a part of the team, no less than 3 years. I think Tom was 3 years, but he was a freelance writer for a couple years before that. Amy's been on staff for 7 years, and Lee was our 3rd editor, so he's been around for like 10 years. So while they haven't officially shadowed me for all that time, they have grown up alongside the channel, right? They have watched it, they have consumed it, they have been an integral part of it, right?
Like, and so what does it mean to shadow someone? Like it doesn't make sense to follow Matthew around an office for days or weeks at a time, but it does make sense to be an integral part of the community. It makes sense to have grown up with the videos. It makes sense to have edited the videos. It makes sense to have made thumbnails for the videos. That is in effect shadowing exactly what the brand is, what the format is, what the videos are. And so once you sort of have that kind of like under your skin and you can't get rid of it, then you're already at the point where you can take what is fun about the format or the pieces of the format that most resonate with you, put that into your own voice and hopefully carry it away. Right?
Well, and this again, the beauty of the format personality hybrid, right, is people are like, oh, well, it's going to fundamentally change when you step away. And I said this in the goodbye video, but like they've been writing these videos for the better part a year if not longer, right? They have been appearing in the videos on the sidelines and in shorts and stuff for the better part of a year. Lee has been literally editing the videos and giving notes on those videos for the better part of 10 years. And so yes, me stepping away changes the voice who's reading those words, but at the end of the day, like the scripting largely should stay the same. There'll be tweaks to the personality and there'll be tweaks to some of the jokes and things like that. But for the most part, they've grown up in that structure and they've been writing that structure for the better part of a year. Without people realizing it, I've just been presenting their words. And now they're just the ones presenting their own words, which is cool.
You're presenting it with also the flavor of post-production too, right? Because it's like, it's both ends of that.
Exactly.
That really make the show.
Right. And the post-production team cannot our editors are phenomenal. Like they're more animators than they are editors. And we call them the editors, but they're absolutely animators.
To fill 20 minutes, right? Like a 20-minute VO bed, as I'll call it, is hard to fill visually. Like that is really hard to fill.
4 times a week. Every single week. We burn through 11 videos every single week. We produce around 13 to 15
what do you
videos
mean
every week.
Burn through?
We use and upload and publish 11 videos every single week. Game theory, film theory, food theory, style theory, 3 GT Lives, which is our live streaming channel. And then on top of that, now there's new shorts on game theory, film theory, food theory, and style theory.
Wow.
I don't understand how you do that. I really, I don't. I don't. Is there a role at Theorist, which is like as a creator-driven company that maybe a Vox or a more traditional media company would never have, like that is making this possible? How are you?
Yeah, like how are they not, right? Like how is like a Vox not putting out that much?
I think there's a point of pride in being a part of this channel and knowing that what we're creating is substantial and meaningful and high quality and putting it out into the world. And again, it goes to that ethos of us as a collective working together to make these things happen. And it's a lot. And it is, I call the number of videos that we create at this point disgusting. Because it is like it is. When you say, hey, congratulations, we finished our 11 videos for the week.
Let's
do it again.
That's crazy.
It's wild, But
I'm no math guy, but 44 videos a month.
Yeah. Right.
It's a lot of videos.
It's a lot of videos.
Yeah. So I think along
the quality you guys are producing.
And the TLDR is like we've clearly gotten them to drunk the Kool-Aid. We've clearly all the way bought into our own hype, just absolutely deeply bought into our, we're doing something really meaningful here, guys. Get out there. No, but there is a point at you have to be like, okay, guys, like if something goes wrong, we've had, there was a moment last year where it's like something went wrong. We lost some footage for a video and like that sucks. And you're like, oh man, I can't believe we lost this footage. And, we've had people like cry about it in the office, like unbelievably upset. And like you do, like at some point you have to go to people and be like, you know what? It's YouTube. This is a YouTube video.
It's fine.
This is a YouTube video. Nobody died. Nobody died when we lost footage. Like we're on YouTube, guys. It's okay. Like we're going to be all right.
Well, and the other thing too, I think is we never ask people to work harder than we ourselves work, and I think that's a big part of it too, is, if you think about it, you talked about 44 videos in a month. Up until this announcement, I am in every single one of those videos. I am the one voicing it. I'm the one in front of the camera. I'm the one editing it. Yeah, right? Think about that.
Crazy.
Every 44 videos a month, 12 months of the year, for 13 years, like, but it's ramped up to that. But like every single one has been my voice, my face, my notes, whatever it is.
November of last year, Matthew was like, there was like a Friday night where he was like supposed to do some pickups, or he was supposed to like, review some footage or whatever. And he was like, I can't do this because I'm so sick of hearing my own voice. I just hate my voice. I just can't listen to it anymore. And it was like, yeah, of course not. Like, this is too much.
Yeah. And like, I think some people, when they saw the announcement video go out about this whole thing, is like, oh, he's burnt out. And he's leaving the platform because he's burnt out. It's like, no, actually, like, clearly I could keep doing this from now until forever, right? Like, this isn't burnout. Like, I'm fine. This is fun. It's still enjoyable. But at the same time, I just recognize that it's my time to pass it on. And this is the moment. And then
it's a lot. It's a lot for one person, right? Like, you can like something and you can not be burned out of doing it altogether, but you can be like, yeah, I recognize like being in 44 videos a month is like, it's like too much. Too many videos to be in. Like, somebody else should be doing those.
Yeah.
So when we go back in time to when you first started having this conversation with Lunar X.
Yeah, Lunar X, yeah.
Were there other suitors? And there were.
Yeah, lots.
Yeah. A lot. And when you took this to market, like what do you think was most attractive? Like, I'm curious about the revenue pie chart at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much is AdSense? How much is brand partnerships?
Sure. Yeah.
What does the business actually look like? And then as you go to market with the YouTube channel, like, I think people would be interested to understand, what are you selling, right? Like, the IP, of course, the actual videos, like what goes into a deal like this, and what did the company look like from a revenue perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of phone calls about this after we sold. And I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? So the first part of that was like, what was the
revenue pie chart?
What was the revenue pie chart? Okay. Well, and the first question before that was were there
other suitors?
Other suitors. And before that, it was like when you went to market. So
right, I was going to say, we should start with when you went to market.
The first thing was we didn't go to market.
We didn't go to market.
We got approached cold by one company and then another and another. And we were like, this is weird. We should at least be, it was weird.
Out of the woodwork.
Cold.
Came out too cold.
Out of the woodwork, totally cold emails from companies who are interested in buying.
Well, real quick, and this we talked earlier about how we were talking about YouTube exit strategies back in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about investors coming into the space back in
2018. There was a VC firm that approached us at VidCon being like, hey, I want to invest in this space. How do I do that? And we were like, people aren't there yet. We literally told them, like, people aren't there yet. There's not enough sophistication in this space to do that. They were like 6 years early, but like after the exit strategy conversation, we at least knew that this was like possible. There have been very limited kind of investments in YouTube channels to date. There have been a few examples of acquisitions, and some big ones of acquisitions not going well. You guys have talked to Smosh, we've talked to Smosh, all of that. But we hadn't thought about selling, anytime soon, really, or it wasn't really quite on the radar yet. And we didn't know what that picture would look like at all. We were just totally undereducated, totally uninformed. And we started getting these requests out of the woodwork. And we were like, we took a phone call and realized immediately that we had no idea what we were doing at all. We were like, we don't know how to value ourselves. We have no idea even the vocabulary of these conversations. Yeah. I need a whole different dictionary for this line of thinking. And so we went back and did a lot of work internally. We got, professional partners. We got a banker. Yeah. We called like the only person we know who had their company acquired and it had gone well. And we were like, what do we do? And he pointed us in the direction of Liontree, which is like, it's a bank with some clout when it comes to like investments in the media space. They were involved in the Maker Disney deal. They were involved in major mergers like CBS and all this stuff. So they had a lot of experience, but they had never really worked with an individual YouTube channel or a creator business before. So it was like a huge learning curve on both sides. Right. Mm-hmm. And once we were kind of through that, then we were able to say, okay, now we can have our first intelligent conversation. Because we were on the phone with the first people who contacted us. They were on the phone. They were just like, well, like, what'd you sell for? And we were like, well, we don't really know. We need to think about that.
Outright?
Yeah.
So the first conversation was, we want to buy the thing outright.
Yes. And they were like, have you considered selling? And we were like, no, not really. But I'm curious about this conversation. And they just kept asking us to like pitch numbers out. They were like, well, just what do you think? What do you think? And we were like, well, we don't know. We need to go back and you know, work on doing evaluation internally. And they were like, yeah, but what do you think? And I mean, we knew immediately that we were at such a disadvantage. And so once we had finally come over this learning curve, then we came back and we had a sense of what we thought we were worth, what we what we could back up with numbers based on, you know, what the revenue was looking like and how our revenue was split. And then we were able to come to the table. And over the course of the next several months, we had lots of other people who joined the conversation. And all in all, from start to finish, we talked to 10 different companies about selling from all across the spectrum. Small VC firms to the biggest media brands out there.
Yeah. And what was also interesting was in those conversations, every single one had a different thing that they wanted to do with us.
Right.
Some of them were only interested in the gaming side. Some of them were interested in taking the company and breaking us down and integrating us into their digital video production. Like, hey, you've been able to create a really good digital video stream. We want you to do that for us.
Meaning like an acqui-hire.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like we'll buy you and you come work and integrate into our company.
Exactly.
Exactly. And some were like, okay, well, we have a food vertical and we have style content. So we're just going to take the 4 channels that you have, or the 3 channels at the time, and we're going to break them apart and we're going to send them into these different lanes. And we were like, that.
And rebrand them?
Yeah. Maybe rebrand them, or maybe just like completely disassemble all of the workflow pipelines, take apart how they're being done, and completely separate them and silo them all out so that they just have no connection to each other at all. All of these systems, and a lot of them right off the bat, we were like, these aren't going to work.
Yeah, there's
no way.
I think that was one of the things that was most surprising, though, is like you would think like, oh, everyone's going to approach this acquisition from probably the same angle, but no, they were all vastly, vastly different, and very quickly helped us narrow down the field of like, hey, if you get it, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it. Because there were immediate red flags. And also, like, one of the things that you hear talked about a lot in the M&A space is this idea of like, what does a good partnership look? What do you want out of a partnership?
Yeah.
And I think while it sounds like just lingo, it's actually very true, right? It is a partnership between one company and another company. And in an ideal world, you are working together for the betterment of everyone.
Both people have to bring something there.
Whoever is the buyer, ultimately, if it's an outright
sale, yes,
can do whatever they want.
100%.
Right. So it's like, it's not a partnership.
Right.
Right. Like you have to trust this person to take care of the brand because.
Absolutely.
Right. Like,
and you can write lots of stuff into contracts.
Sure,
right?
but it doesn't matter.
But
they can always change their strategy.
Sure.
At the end of the day, yeah, they have veto power over a lot of stuff, right? And when it comes to like what they're buying, that was like one of the questions you asked, like, what are they buying, right? So for us, it was a few different things, right? It's obviously all of the IP, all of the intellectual property rights of anything that is our channels, that's derived from our channels, spin-offs, all of that kind of stuff. And that's where it becomes tricky. And I think it's even trickier for YouTube channels that are based around a personality, because you have to be able to draw a box around what is our channel actually, right? What is a theory? It's like, okay, it's a piece of like edutainment content that is done in an animated style. It's done primarily in voiceover, but like sometimes maybe not. And you have to be able to define what is a theory format so that you can understand what it is. And you can also understand like what it isn't, because as people, Matthew and I also exist on the internet, like just as human beings. Of course. And we might want to do something else ever someday. And you want to be clear that what we would do if we, I don't know, create a travel cooking show.
Where does theory begin and video essay end?
Or like if you explain something on the internet.
Right.
Is that a theory?
Is that a theory?
Is that a theory? So we had to define like what the heck is a theory, and also say like, okay, outside of that, Matthew and I can exist on the internet as people and talk about other stuff. We can talk about the fact that we went to the beach, or we can make a video someday about, I don't know, a trip to Greenland, whatever it is you want. So defining what you're buying is actually harder than you think.
It's hard.
And then like, how do you, like, I don't even know how you would do that for like a vlog channel or,
I don't think those are
acquisition targets.
Acquisition targets.
No.
They can't be.
I mean, they could be
has to be a
investment.
scalable
Correct.
media brand.
Yes,
They could be
100%,
investment
yeah.
targets, right? In the
Sure.
same way that you would invest in, like, in a professional athlete or something like that, where you would own a piece of their business or own a piece of their the back end partnerships or something like that. But yeah, it's not the same, right? And so there's the intellectual property, defining what that is, and then there's this idea of like we've built a system that runs, right? We built a functional, profitable business that runs, and I mean you're acquiring the EBITDA if you want to get really technical about it. But you're
I
acquiring.
didn't know what EBITDA stood for so long.
Oh, yeah,
and we
me
should
neither.
for if there's someone listening who's heard the term, used the term, and doesn't know what it stands for.
I think in our industry, it's pretty much synonymous with your profit, right?
It's just your profit.
It's your
Yeah,
profit.
it's a fancy-
Before you
yeah.
pay your taxes, it's what it's
earnings
the profit.
before interest,
Right.
taxes,
and
amortization.
And something else.
Amortization? What is
I
that?
don't
Appreciation?
know.
What's the
what is
in
the-
there's an
EBITDA?
There's an in there. I don't know.
See, no one knows.
No one knows
What
the
a
ah.
ridiculous term.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's use
so
profit.
fun. Yeah, right. It's,
What's
right.
going on?
So yeah, it's basically like, okay, if you make $1 million in a year and you spend 800,000 of that making the production, you're left with 200,000.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
your
profit.
EBIT. That's basically
I mean,
your
basically. I mean,
and then
yeah.
you're gonna end up paying like, whatever, between 50 and 100 grand to taxes or whatever. But before you pay those taxes, that's your
it,
EBITDA.
yeah.
That's
and then,
it.
And then there's a revenue multiple on that.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Did you guys learn about because I don't know. I don't know if you can or can't share that, but like that is something that I think that people are exploring of like, what is the revenue multiple on a YouTube channel or a media business?
I don't think there's a standard.
there's
Is
not
the
a
thing.
standard.
Right.
Because it's all the stability of the business you're buying, right? So
Sure.
and the potential of the business you're buying, right? So when you talk about tech companies, oh my God, this is so geeky. This is
No,
so
this is
boring.
great.
I'm
This
so
is why
sorry.
By the way,
I'm
Right.
so
This is the
sorry for
show.
the retention you're losing right now.
No.
This is
It's
it.
probably increasing.
Yeah.
This is the show.
Right.
Yeah.
We've been boring up
I
to
know.
this point.
I know.
This is
All this mushy garbage.
All the other stuff
This
we're
is
cutting
stuff.
out.
Yeah, please,
yeah.
please
Okay,
do.
great.
It was
Easy
garbage.
ease, and now
Okay,
we're
great.
here, and that's all that matters.
So
Right, give Easy Ease the credit that Easy
Right
Ease.
there.
It makes the internet run. Okay, Easy Ease.
It does.
If I could invest
It
in
brings
just
calm and peace to many people
if
on
I
the
could
other
just
end.
acquire
Yeah.
Easy Ease as a concept, that is the best
Shout
investment I
out to
could make.
whoever invented the easy ease.
Right? People at this point are just Googling. Like, look at the Google trends after this goes out. People are going to be like,
Easy
Easy
Ease.
Ease. What's that? Yeah. Anyway, please.
yeah.
Duh. What is
Even right? That no one knows what the is. What's the in EBITDA? So you have tech companies, right? And they've created something that's like some like amazing little app, and everyone's like, "Wow, this has the potential to reach like a gazillion people and make a gazillion dollars." And so they get some crazy multiple, 10x, 15x multiple, like something wild, right? With YouTube channels, and a lot of times that's not warranted, but every once in a while it is. Okay, fine. And YouTube channels are a completely different model from that, right? On the other end of the spectrum, you have traditional businesses where you maybe like 2x, 3x or something like that. If it's like just a tried and true kind of business, you don't expect it to change very much. You don't expect it to grow very much. The multiple is smaller because there's not all this like crazy unlocked potential there, right? YouTube channels fall like somewhere in the middle.
Also
of that.
because there's subjectivity around like the key individuals.
Exactly.
100%.
Right? Like-
Yes, very much so.
There's a question of that's still probably up in the air. What happens when you guys are fully out?
100%.
Right?
Isn't
Like-
it a fun mystery?
Yeah,
I don't know.
and-
Stay tuned to find out more.
I think they call that, it's like key man risk or
Yes,
something,
it's
right?
key man risk,
It's
yes,
key man risk.
Yeah.
That's the big buzzword in investment in this space, is the key man risk.
Right.
And one of the things that we came to the table with
KMR, as we call it in the
is
biz.
it?
Ooh.
Oh,
No, I
the-
just-
the old
it's-
KMR.
I like it. Oh, yeah.
It's KMR.
I
yeah.
love it. Yeah.
KPI is the KMR.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It should be
Oh
key
my God.
person risk, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Just to
exactly.
be-
I wasn't offended. It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah, but I think
But it
just
should be.
generally it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key human risk.
The key human risk.
yeah.
But if there's a dog, all of a sudden, like, that's
Yeah,
It's
what
a
if
problem.
which is possible on YouTube?
right.
Yeah.
Key thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It could be,
Yeah.
You know,
Dog risk.
Grumpy cat.
Grumpy cat.
goes
Rest
away
in
like
peace,
that.
Maybe
right?
key
I don't know.
existence risk.
Key existence.
Just the existence of this
Key
thing.
entity risk.
Entity risk.
Key
Yeah.
Character?
Cur.
So there's the
Sorry, you were saying.
What was that? Multiples? I forget.
I don't know. We're
What's
lost.
going on?
So yeah, there's a huge amount of subjectivity around how much does the owner of the channel or the personality on the channel matter, right? With a personality-based channel, it's everything. And then you work into these formats, and maybe it doesn't matter as much, right? And for us, I think it helped that regardless of acquisition, this was going to happen anyway. I don't think people realize that. Do people realize that? But it didn't matter if we sold. Like, we were going to do this anyway.
Yeah, this was going to
We were going
happen.
to step away.
Yeah, no, this was going to happen.
The
And we were
creative
already
director-
building up the company. We
Yeah.
were already training up people.
Yeah.
Like, the acquisition helped further that along and helped
Yes.
secure those pipelines faster and probably more effectively than it would have
Mhm.
otherwise. But this timeline was always happening.
Did you look at other possibilities of financing, if not acquisition?
No.
No.
No,
You
No.
didn't.
no.
You weren't interested in that, or you were just
But
like,
financing comes with the responsibility still there.
Exactly.
That's-
you
well-
you lose a lot of control, but now all of a sudden there's a lot more oversight, right? And
We're control freaks. Either we have it or we don't. Like, there's
There's no middle ground.
That's
yeah,
it.
we are type A plus.
Understood.
Here's the thing.
Like,
Yeah.
And we've actually, so I don't know, I think we're a lot more uptight about this kind of stuff than other people, but we've talked about this as it relates to even stuff like Patreon and fan funding, which are wonderful tools. They are great. But as soon as you take money from someone, and this is just like kind of a hard fact of the world and it sucks. As soon as you take money from someone, money isn't free. You
Mhm.
owe them something.
yes.
You have another responsibility. And we already felt a lot of responsibility. We've
responsibility.
already been over that. There's a lot of responsibility. And so when you take an investment, right? You've taken money. And now you owe something. You are expected to pay that back in multiples, in fact. And so if we were confident in the business that we're building, like, great, we're fine on our own, having that middle ground just wasn't an appealing idea for us. And I think for some people it really is, because they feel like they have a partner, but they still feel like they have all this ownership and control. And for us, it didn't feel like the right fit.
Well, and also, I mean, we didn't need it. Like, if we really wanted
it
to,
wasn't
like,
about the
no,
finance.
No, it
like,
wasn't
we are
about the money.
tremendously profitable. Like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, our business is tremendously profitable. The EBITDA is great.
Big EBITDA.
Big
yeah,
EBITDA.
big old EBITDA.
Big old
You know, it's
And
a big, mighty EBITDA. Yeah.
And that sounds like a really inflated thing to say, but I think it's really important to be honest about these businesses, right? A
They're
lot of them
super high
are
margin.
incredibly
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
margin.
Yeah.
And that's not, and we've, like, you know, through various weird emails that we've gotten over the years, we've sent a lot of other people's books, other big creators in the space, and they are just as profitable. I mean, like,
Yeah.
this is something that I think is an honest conversation to have, and they don't need financing. They don't need like a cash infusion.
Right.
They have it.
Yeah,
It's
so-
called
Yeah.
brand deals
So
and
we're getting
assets.
more
Yeah.
money, but with, but you're
But less
sacrificing
control.
control. And I think it's, it's important to note, I think for us, it's one thing to say, like, oh, look at us, big EBITDA, this and that, but it was always intentional, because, like, we are very fiscally conservative because
Yeah.
of that responsibility that we
Sure,
feel
sure.
to our audience.
Totally.
2023 was a hard year for this industry because there was a lot of tech shakeups as a lot of people
Yeah.
are getting laid off. There was a lot of uncertainty on the platform as shorts take up more screen real estate. And so those long form videos that actually monetize are getting less and less views as short form, which doesn't monetize, slowly to, take over the screen space, right? And so on harder years, having that big old EBITDA and having something that is a nest egg for the company ensures that you don't have to panic, and that you are still able to sustain and pivot and grow and make sure that your employees are taken care of for when it's tough. I think
In 2018, like when
Yeah.
we lost over 250 grand from the Defy thing.
Mhm.
Still have nightmares about it. But when that happened, it was like, that really sucks for Matthew and I, right? That sucks for us. It doesn't have to suck for anybody else.
our
who
employees
works
do
there.
not see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
or
They don't
feel
see
that
it.
or anything.
They don't feel it.
That's
no one
huge.
got laid off. No one got to talk about, we have got to tighten our belts, guys. We got to cut back on these. No one got that. No one felt it. No one had to worry. And that's the point. Right?
So I think it's really important to note that, because we are entering the era of, like, sometimes YouTube channels are discussed like, early stage tech startups, where it's like, invest everything back in, and I think the base premise of YouTube is, like, you do a thing that doesn't cost very much money, right? Like, it started with, like, film on your MacBook,
Or at least it shouldn't
or
cost
it
a lot of money.
shouldn't.
Right.
It
I mean,
shouldn't,
have
at
to.
least in the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then as audience grows, revenue should grow, but production costs should grow very minimally.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yep.
it should actually not necessarily, it does not need to be proportionate to revenue growth.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
It actually should just slowly grow.
Yep.
And it needs to operate like that.
It
So
has
the
to.
overhead is low enough
Yep.
that you can deal with the volatility
Exactly.
of the business we're all in, which is advertising.
Right.
Yep.
We're matching the ad market,
Mhm.
right? With, like, there's a volatility to AdSense.
A market that you don't have control over.
You don't have control over.
Like, I
Right.
mean,
You can do nothing about that, and a platform that you don't ultimately at the end of the day have
Right.
control over. You're building great, building a business on quicksand, and you're building it where it's funded by people who are at the best are like cyclical yearly and are subject to all of these like crazy consumer whims and these huge other market factors. Yeah, there's like nothing in your control there.
You pitch that to the VCs.
Yeah,
like,
they love that. They
it's
were
on
like
quicksand. It's
exactly.
It's a big win. Yeah, and it's
They were
also
like, wow,
by the sky. You know?
this sounds like rock solid. Let me in. They were banging down the door for that pitch.
No, but I mean, like you hear it all the time, like with BuzzFeed. You know, when they're one of the biggest brands to exist in the digital video space, and all of a sudden they're like, and we're going to expand into Facebook, and all in on Facebook video, and this and that, and then all of a sudden Facebook video goes away and isn't a priority. Now all of a sudden you have all this investment and all this overhead that you're responsible for, and it goes away, right?
It's also about keeping your process sustainable.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
this
absolutely.
is like, as you're saying, it's like cyclical. A lot may happen. It's a long game.
Yes.
And you got to be able to withstand.
Yep. It's a lot like stocks in that way, right? You see the rise, you see the fall, but like, and the beauty of our format and our brand has always been like, we've never had that big thing that popped off. There's never been that big viral hit. It's been year over year, smart, sustainable growth and smart, sustainable programming.
Do you have the thought, I feel like as a YouTube creator, you always have to have this thought of like, what I'm creating, could I do this by myself again if I needed to?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I feel like you kind of
I had to let go of that like a while ago. Like that's the thing. Because there's no way, right? There's no way to even come remotely close to anything like the scale and anything like what we're doing now, specifically because, you know, like you said before, you hire people who are much, much better at doing different parts of it than you are. And there's no way for us to replicate those skills at this point. There's no chance. But the idea that, okay, we're going to launch another channel, but guess what? It's not a different format. It's using the same writers because they've just written a food theory. Now they can write a style theory.
Right.
And
interesting.
The editors, they've been editing a game theory, bet they can edit a film theory, and guess what? Yeah, they can, and they're great at it. And so using translatable skills is what really helps to keep the overhead low because you can use the same people who can, again, expand their skill set, get into new creative mediums, feel creatively satisfied because they're not stuck only editing and animating video game characters. Now they're editing and animating Marvel characters or fruit. I don't know. For
me dancing around in bread gloves,
exactly,
or whatever.
Or the edible underwear, the Grimace Shake episode.
We keep going back to edible underwear. Right?
You guys really like the
that
edible
one
underwear.
really,
it's a very memorable one. I don't know if you can tell.
Let's put B-roll of that episode.
Please do the
Really
entire
stick in the
time.
brain.
Whenever you see retention dipping, just insert that clip. Yeah, that'd be great. Please.
And that's how I think we've been able to keep overhead really low because we're adding to the same group of people who can do everything. We're not creating completely separate teams to do all of the different channels. It's really all one big pool. And that's also the only way that you keep it even remotely feeling like the same brand, right?
Yeah.
How else do you have a gaming channel and a style channel and a film channel and a food channel that actually manage to feel like anything close to the same brand? There's only one way to do that. And you have to have like overlap with the people working on them, right?
It is also worth calling out. Like we were very upfront with Lunar when we said we are stepping down. You know, like this was not a surprise to them. It was something that they were fully on board with. It was something that they believed in.
It was a selling point, actually. I mean, the idea that they were because they brought up to us the key human risk, right? The key
entity,
KHR, the Cur, and we were like, no, we've been planning for that for a long time, actually. And here are 2 going on 3 creative directors that we already have in place. You know, we're only missing 1, and then we ramp them up and then we set them loose. And
here's our training plan for them, and this is what they've done so far. This is where they're going. And all of a sudden, you know, like we were talking about, that key entity risk is scary for a lot of investors and a lot of people.
As
it
should be.
100%.
Yeah.
But the fact that we were already in the middle of the process, the fact that we had already had data to show like, hey, these people are liked by the audience and look at all these scripts that they've produced that have been well received. And the episodes where I haven't done voiceover, those haven't shown a significant performance dip. Like all of those things combine into like, hey, we are willing to take this journey with you and we support where this brand is going.
Yeah, and kudos to them for doing
I
that.
think it was great.
Huge. Yeah. Huge.
How important was having data around launching new channels and new verticals? Because I imagine that's also an X factor of like, well, we have a team here. They could launch fitness theory. There could be tech theory.
Sure.
Yeah. Big.
Yeah, big. It showed that we were able. It showed that we had a format that could travel and that we had a brand that could spread,
Yeah.
like the thing that we talked to them about, because again, like you're talking to investment people, you're talking to people outside of this space who don't understand YouTube. And
But if you put it in slide decks, they understand it a lot.
a
better.
lot of Gantt charts.
If you can just,
A lot of
if
Gantt
it can
charts.
fit on a PowerPoint slide,
That's
it's
great.
suddenly comprehensible.
Yeah. But we talked to them a lot about how being a theorist, it's a lifestyle brand. It's approaching the world around you with overthinking, with a sense of curiosity, and wanting to optimize your life. If you are a fan of sports, congratulations, you are a theorist. If you are a fan of cooking, and you want to optimize your recipes, like you are a theorist. And showing that we had success in film and food and gaming, that was already a point. And saying like, hey, and we are a couple months away from launching Style Theory, which is fashion, fashion and beauty, which is a whole separate audience and vertical that we can tap into. And here's, sports theory. If we ever are able to find a system where the sports leagues can get involved, which, it's
That's
not,
hard. Yeah.
We've talked to them. They wanted too much control. But it's one of those things that like, hey, maybe at some point ESPN or Hulu or any of these companies are looking for ancillary sports related
That
content.
will happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I am Sports Theory would have been our first spinoff.
Yeah.
Like we had
Yeah.
very serious talks with all the sports leagues back in the day.
They wanted to like own pieces of all the content
Yeah,
and all this
yeah.
stuff. Again,
it was ahead,
control
but it
freaks.
will-
We either have it
Yeah,
or we
yeah.
don't.
But it absolutely
Yeah.
will happen. Same thing with music theory. Same like our audience has been asking for book theory forever. I mean, like it really can spread out, and each one of those is its own interesting merch vertical. Food theory is able to capitalize off of pots and pans and cookware, and we're testing out the best cookware, and then we're making our own. Style theory is making its own apparel brand, and we're doing a fashion show in April. We own Fashion Week, and we're spotlighting all these different creators. Game theory, we're creating our own game. Film theory, we're commenting on these smaller indie series, and let's make our own animation show. And all of a sudden, you see how broad this brand can be and how exciting it is, because we have the marketing arm being able to talk about it with the theories, but also our audience is tremendously favorable towards new IPs, and they will follow you when we say like,
cool.
hey, here's a cool new
That's
channel
huge.
that you've never heard of, or here's a cool new movie or this game that you'd never played, but here it is. They'll follow us with those places because we have that trust. And so instead of talking about other people's products and ideas and stuff, like why aren't we creating them ourselves and then solving it internally and figuring or seeding it out for them to talk about?
And when it comes to launching the new channels, I mean, it's excruciating. We have like the most uptight process for launching a new YouTube channel that I've ever heard of. And we had basically, for lack of a better term, like an actual playbook for how to launch a YouTube channel.
That's the playbook that existed long before
That
anything
is
else. Yeah,
actually, we had a
that's the
channel
playbook.
launch playbook,
Let's hear it.
and we had, we've given talks about this. We've consulted a lot of people on this, and it comes from just an overweening amount of preparation ahead of time. We research every vertical that we go into. We watch everything in that vertical. We understand how the hosts talk to the audiences. We understand the colors they use, how long episodes are, how often they post, what their opening lines are, whether they have a theme song or not, what their titles include. Do their titles include punctuation? Do their thumbnails involve a white stroke on the outside of everyone's head? Whatever it is, we know everything about the vertical before we even decide to go into it. And then from there, we decide, okay, can we play in this space? Where aren't people saying the things that we would like to say? Are there enough collaborators in this space that we think we could be part of a community in this ecosystem? And then from there, it's like, okay, what would we actually say? And we come up with literally a year's worth of content titles and log lines. If you don't have, and I mean, maybe more than that. It was like
I was gonna say
100.
it's about
like
100. It's about 100. Like we shoot
100
for like
titles and
100.
log lines.
Yeah.
And if you don't have 100 titles and log lines, you don't have enough content to like think about launching
Do you
this
match
channel.
thumbnails to those, or like a couple thumbnail mocks, or like how do you do?
Totally.
Like you do. Okay.
You have to think about the audience that you want
Yeah.
and what they're already watching.
Of course.
Right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's very common practice for other people to do this as well. And what's
sure.
really fun is when we start to see people doing it back to us. That's when we know we're actually part of a community. Style is a great example of this, where we have channels that we super admire in that space. And we watch everything that they do. We watch how they speak to their audience. We watch the structure of their videos. And we're like, this is so well done. We admire this so much. And we take what we can as it applies to what we're doing. And we do that same thing with thumbnails to try and say, okay, if we want a similar audience to kind of watch our stuff, how can we make them feel comfortable enough to click from this video to our video, right?
Yeah.
How can we bridge that gap for them if they've never been here and they don't know what to expect? Can we make them feel more comfortable? Can we help bring them over? And we've started doing that in the style space. And we've just, as of a few weeks ago, started seeing other people mimic our thumbnails in that space. And we're like, oh, we're in.
We're in.
We're here.
It's so interesting.
And now we're having a dialogue with those other channels. And then maybe we collab with them. But if not, we know that there's like this implicit friendliness of like, okay, we are helping each other and we are supporting each other through a visual conversation or a format conversation where we know that we want our audiences to talk to each other.
Then it's so
interesting.
It's super
vertical,
cool.
And analyzing your vertical is something we talk about a lot of like, how do you even do that?
Yeah.
Because your vertical exists on YouTube, right? Which you have to study deeply. Because the suggested videos, I think it's a very interesting thing you're bringing up. But I also think you actually need to recognize and understand where your vertical exists beyond.
Sure.
And what type of information they're engaging with there and what type of, because the only way you can see the gaps is if you fully understand in the real estate of the internet where this vertical hangs out.
Right.
Like, where do these people hang out?
Yeah.
What are they engaging in? What are they not engaging in? Like, you just have to really deeply look at where the white space is.
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, all that.
Yeah.
But and then from there, going back to the playbook idea, it's once we've kind of developed all this list, once we've done all this research, and once we're kind of got the go ahead, it's we have to launch with 5 videos. Like day 1, 5 videos. It's not launch on an empty channel. It's not here's the only one. It's 5 videos that within those 5 videos give you the thesis of the channel. Here are the range of things we're going to talk about. Here's how they're going to look. Here's how they're going to sound. Here's an episode about hygiene. Here's an episode about clothing and personal style. Here's an episode about a real life experiment where we do something wacky like try to kill you with a high heel, and here's something.
Video did really well.
It did.
Great thumbnail.
People were really excited to kill
thumbnail.
things with high heels.
Yeah.
Here's one where
The
we
question
analyze.
you didn't know you had the answer to.
Here's one where we analyze Hulk's pants because we're going to dip into fictional characters and fictional IP and how fashion plays into that space. And then from there, we've taken you on a watch journey. You've gotten a sense of like what this what this channel represents. And also from our side, we've gotten a sense of what videos have gotten the most traction. And we see like, oh, they really like this one. They didn't care for this one as much. Like maybe we need to, do we still want to pursue this? Do we want to kind of like merge more into one area or another?
Yeah, we can turn the dials in the background about what kinds of topics we're covering based on that initial burst of viewership that we see. And when we're going in for an actual channel launch, we also focus all of the attention on it, right? Style Theory is a great example. We got to 1 million subscribers in 62 hours, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Was it
quick?
Was it 62?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it was yeah.
I think it was less, but
Was it less?
But anyway, it was one of those things though. Like again,
anyway,
you're
it was
structuring
very
that's
short,
crazy.
right? It was a very short amount of time because we intentionally sent people to a channel with everything we had from every other channel. We pointed straight at it and said, go watch this right now. And when they landed there, they landed on 5 20-minute episodes. If you make it through all those episodes, it's 100 minutes of watch time on a brand new channel. We actually got flagged or something. YouTube thought we were spamming.
Yeah, because of.
And they tried to demonetize the channel. There were like problems early on because
We got it worked out.
YouTube's like internal systems couldn't handle all of the watch minutes that were suddenly flooding to this new channel. But we also took the opportunity to point people very specifically to videos in that watch journey, and we plugged them in at different places. So the film theory that we had that week pointed straight to the episode on Style Theory about Hulk's pants.
Yeah, we did a Marvel episode on film theory. Hey, you're watching wow, you like this Marvel episode. Hulk's a Marvel hero. Go check out his pants. Boom, there it is. And so again, you're creating all these synergistic hooks of watch you over here, drive you here. Watch you over here, drive you over
It just has
Video
you have to
to
make it easy
video-
for people, right?
Yeah.
You just have
Video
to
to
make it easy.
video relationship is one of the most important things on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think we found that like sometimes, like sometimes we'll make a video with the creator and then they'll put out a big video 6 months later.
Yeah.
But there'll be a connection,
Yep,
right? And then
100%.
the interview will
Yeah,
just immediately boost because there's like a
Mhm.
connection of an unbelievable amount of suggested traffic. And so
I think the best example was we interviewed Ryan Trahan right before
The
he
Penny
went out on the Penny
series.
series.
Yeah, sure.
So it came out
Great.
in the midst of it,
Yep.
and there were 30 plus videos that could recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's this episode of him
That's
talking. about
fantastic.
it.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
So-
Suggested video is such a powerful force on the platform, which is also one of the reasons why YouTube in 2023 is hard, right? Again, going
Yeah.
back to that
Yeah.
idea of screen real estate becoming more and more limited
Yeah.
as YouTube tries to make two pretty distinct viewing experiences work on one platform, with shorts and with long form, that you've seen suggested video kind of be in this unstable state and kind of like in
Yeah.
this state of flux right now,
I
which is
also
interesting.
think suggested video is getting put into question with connected TV viewership,
Yes. Mhm.
right? Because like we last year, 30% of our viewership came from connected TV.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great.
That's
The
which is
watch
great.
time's
That's
longer on
way
TV.
longer.
the-
CPMs are higher on TV. Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Congratulations.
That's
a
a
win.
win. Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But like I was watching some of your guys' videos
Yeah.
on connected TV.
Well, thank you very much for
Yeah.
that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Yeah.
Is that still your AdSense or
What? Oh,
But no.
I mean,
No.
but thank you on behalf of
Just
Lunar.
generally,
Thank you on
yeah.
behalf of our corporate
for the
organization.
yeah.
No, but like I think,
Yeah.
and again, it's a partnership, right? We are still
Yeah.
giving our best work to
Of
them,
course,
so
of
that way
course.
they can.
Yes.
But anyway, yes.
Anyhow, revenue. the
Speaking
revenue
of connected TVs and high CPMs, yeah.
But the
I
revenue
was just
pie
bragging
chart.
about the fact that he has time to watch TV, and I'm like, oh man, that's great.
Well, I'm watching TV in the context of
I-
researching
no, of
for
course,
the
absolutely.
interview. It's
Yeah.
it's
100%.
Work-life integration.
integration.
Yeah, right
yes,
there it
yeah.
is.
So, like, what was the revenue of the company when you went out, like, and you're doing in the diligence phase?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, you're like showing them here's how we make money. You
Yeah.
know, is it like majority AdSense? Is it brand partnerships? What does it look like?
I think it has a similar breakdown to a lot of channels that you guys have probably talked to.
Yeah.
I think you read on
Yeah.
a while back, and I think we followed a very similar path to a lot of other channels in the space, just in general. The only thing that I think is weird about us is that we have had a real under reliance, or we have never overly relied on brand integrations in general.
Interesting.
Our AdSense is a big chunk, right?
Yeah.
We are in verticals that have typically monetized pretty well, and we are, typically on the more premium end of what just happens
Sure.
to be out there. And so,
and longer videos.
longer videos, all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So, AdSense is a good chunk. And AdSense and brand deals are definitely like the top two sources, right? And together, they're the vast majority of our revenue. Now, we've had some really good plays this past year into product. And so that pie has actually shifted so that product takes up a much bigger slice than it has in the past, because we've, really focused in on that strategy. But if you think about, the typical AdSense being between 40 and 60% of revenue, and then brand deals being like another 25 to 40%, just depending on the time of year and the channel, right? So we're like in that same ballpark, I think, with a lot of other channels out there. But we're also in 4 different verticals, right?
Yeah.
So some of them do great on the AdSense front and
Got
might
it.
be a little bit harder to score brand integrations for, and some of them like clean up on the brand deal front and might have like a slightly lower CPM or might have a more volatile CPM.
The actual fascinating thing about it too is, and again, it's kind of like having a diversified portfolio, which is fantastic. Like
Right.
in 2023 alone, I'd say outside of Style Theory, but every other channel was the top earning channel at some point during the year, during
interesting.
1 month. So for the vast majority of the year, it was Game Theory, because Game Theory always tends to be, because
Yeah.
it's the oldest, it's the
It's got a
longest, has
huge
the most
back
views.
catalog,
It's
right?
massive
Yeah.
back catalog. Great, right? So for Game Theory was that for a lot of it, but Film Theory surged for about like probably 3 months, 4 months or whatever. Then Food Theory actually dominated throughout the summer months, which was shocking to us all and really took off. And then towards the end of the year, GT Live, our little engine that could, the little live stream channel, just surged out and bested everyone. And so the great thing about that is you really do see this like distributed risk across all of them, where as one rises, another falls, and as one falls, or sometimes they're all just firing on all cylinders, and it's great across the
I
board.
think it's kind of interesting that you guys made channels that are equally hard to produce, right? Because
Why? That was so dumb.
because a lot of creators go like their second channel
Yes.
is
Yeah.
a Reacts
Let's change
channel.
up the
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Yeah,
easy.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one's supposed to be easier.
Yep.
But you went, this is hard.
Yeah.
Let's make another one.
Let's make it all hard,
That's
yeah.
actually 4x how hard this is.
No, totally.
Yeah, because that is, Because that I feel like is what eventually happens. Is like, again, you make the Reacts channel. It's like, okay, this is easier to produce, and it's doing 1 million views or 3 million views, and that means the margin's higher over here that can fund this thing.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
that
you
would have
didn't-
been smart.
You didn't do
Yeah,
that.
that
Clearly,
would've
you
been the
figured
smart.
something out.
Yeah, you
You're doing
figured-
11 in a week.
Right.
There's some sort of process.
A lot of manpower, a lot of talents,
Yeah.
a lot of passion.
Yeah, but I think like the reason for that wasn't because we wanted all the channels to be hard. It was actually because originally, if you really, really go back to it, is because we thought that one channel wasn't just going to survive, right?
Yeah.
So when
Got it.
2015 came around and Game Theory had been around for 4-ish years, we were like, okay, well, this is YouTube. The maximum lifespan of a channel is 5 years. So we got 1 good year left. And we were
let's
like,
launch a new channel.
let's launch a new channel.
As one kind of crests over
Yeah.
the hill, like let's launch the other thing. So that way, this one is now the thing that's carrying forward.
Wow.
Well, this one kind of goes down.
How funny.
But lo and behold, it's like, but we kept it alive, and it's still going and stronger than ever. And so
Right.
it's like, well, okay, well, cool.
Yeah.
And then food theory, we wanted to do food theory for a long time, but it was one of those things where we just needed the manpower to do it. And we're like, well, let's launch food theory because these other guys are getting kind of long in the tooth, and like maybe creatively it's starting to get a little bit hard to find things or whatever. Food theory, like, oh my gosh, there's a burst of fresh air, and also everything else continues and thrives again. And so it's on one hand, did we anticipate having like 5 channels and all of them being very difficult and time intensive to produce? No, we didn't really.
No.
because we built them in a way of like, oh, well, when one goes, the next one rises.
Got it.
But then they all just lived on. And it's like, oh, well, this is great. Woohoo, success.
Yeah, hey,
Right, yeah.
What are your guys' roles right now at Theorist Media, and how long are you going to do those roles?
What a great question. What is our role? Okay. So why is this a difficult question? So Theorist has an org chart, right?
Yeah.
We have a piece of paper that says
You're just the couple that lives in the office.
I mean,
Right?
kind of.
Yes.
And our
They
son
can't
has
get you
12 best friends who live in the basement. So
We're the landlords that awkwardly live over the offices.
So Theorist has an org chart, right?
Yeah.
And it has everyone's roles, and the editors report to this person, and the writers report to this person, and the creative directors, and all that stuff. And we are not on it.
You're not on
technically.
the org chart.
We're not on the org
We are
chart.
kind of like floaty
So-
bubbles.
So there's the org chart, and then there's a circle around the org chart, and we are these like little planets in orbit around
Wow.
the org chart. And so my day-to-day existence, I can't speak to whatever the heck you're going to be doing after you're not hosting all the other 4 jobs that you have.
I was going to say, right.
But when it comes to what I do is like I might be in any part of that org chart at any given time, and I'm in like 5 of those places at once.
Got it.
But at the end of the day, my primary objective is being the one to say, okay, where are we going in a year? Where are we going in 2 years? What are we supposed to be accomplishing right now in the bigger picture? And that's why I was the tip of the spear for our acquisition, and that's why I was the tip of the spear for the all of that research for the style vertical, all of watching all of those videos, all of defining what that space was. That was me, right? And so I'm behind a lot of the stuff and sort of the foundation of a lot of the stuff that our whole team ends up building, which is really cool.
And then me, meanwhile, like on paper, again, I'm still CEO. I'm still listed as president of the company. But really what I function as is chief creative director. For, again, like if they're all kind of like their own
Chief creative director.
Yeah.
The CDD.
Yeah, the CDD.
Standard CDD.
The standard CDD,
classic CDD. Where if you have kind of these creative directors who are learning how to be YouTubers and get a control over the whole production process and the creative, and they're leading their individual channels, I'm then kind of like brand supervisor. I'm helping to supervise them and give them advice and weigh in on programming and serve as a mentor and a coach to them and a support network to them when it comes to, hey, how are you communicating with the editors? Are you getting what you want out of them? Like, how is that relationship happening? How do we work on the writers, portfolio, and how do we, make sure that they're being trained up and learning what is a theory and how do you write that? How's programming? Let's learn about that. And so really as the elder statesman of Theorist, my job at this point is making sure that the video production and the creative pipelines are running smoothly and cleanly and communication is still going on. So that way, again, I'm functioning as the audience. I'm representing them and telling the creative directors how to continue to relate to them in a way that makes sense and feels appropriate, but also to Lunar, where it's like, hey, Lunar, this is our business. This is how we work. This is what our audience stands for and who they are. And so as we pursue new projects like fashion shows and video games and, new theory wear lines and things like that, this is how this is what feels theoristy. This is what feels appropriate to them. This is the sort of stuff that we as a collective can be excited about moving forward.
Is there a moment where you're fully out? And is that planned, or is it just like?
Are you ever fully out of YouTube? YouTube is always with you. It's in spirit,
always
in your heart.
But I guess not. Yeah, not like fully out of being on
it's
YouTube.
with you, Toby.
It's probably with you.
Like a virus.
Yeah. Like, is there like, are you hiring a new CEO of Theorist? Are you working towards like actually being out of this business?
I think there's a world where, there are other people who can rise up and take over our responsibilities, because we are nebulous and because we are there, and there are people in our company who are ready to take on those responsibilities. And I think, with a bit more training and with a bit more practice could very well take on those roles. Right.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of hubris in being like, no, I'm irreplaceable. No one can ever replace what I do. And I'll never be able to leave because of it. Like that's first of all, who wants that? Like the best thing that you can do for yourself and for any company that you work for, and this goes with like anybody, is make yourself replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
Like find ways of taking bits of what you do and carving them off and training someone to do them as well or better than you can, right? And eventually you'll have taken a lot of the parts of what you do and you'll have been able to empower somebody else to do those. And that's a pretty amazing thing that's a gift you can give to someone. Like it's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in reality though, right? Like there is always going to be a moment where we move on just because, I'm not going to be a 70-year-old still managing the same YouTube channel, right? Maybe, but like
it depends on how big this thing
is. Hey, fellow kids, here we go.
There's like a succession narrative here, right? You're running like this massive media company.
Right. Hopefully the people who are taken over aren't as terrible as that.
Right.
But
I was going to say, we're not passing this on to our kid. They're like comments. They were like, well, they could have just waited till Ollie was a little bit older and then like passed the YouTube channel on to them. I was like, I wouldn't do that to him. Poor guy.
Yeah. But I made mention of this.
Here you go. Here's 40 million subscribers.
Right, there you go. Yeah. So this is my legacy to you.
I know you're just getting into sophomore year of high school. But
good luck with the acne and the YouTube channels.
But I mentioned this earlier, but like at the end of the day, we love learning. I think this is one of the first things that we said as a part of this is like we thrive off of learning and challenging ourselves. And there was this truism in theater where like back when I was in theater, like if you could do anything else, don't do theater because it's thankless. It's a pretty miserable experience. You're out of a job every 3 months. Like even if you're working, like it's a tough business to work in. And and I was able to find happiness outside of theater. And I think for Steph and I, you look at YouTube and it kind of functions in a lot of the same way, right? Where it is this, like you said, it's this all-consuming thing that you're constantly inundated with and you're constantly absorbing and this and that. And we, just by the nature of who we are and our intellectual curiosity and stuff, we have other interests. I think that's what's helped the creative of Theorist work so well. But I think like, I love rock climbing. I'm teaching myself how to ice skate right now. There's a whole back catalog of books that I want to read that I've never gotten to read before because of how much time it's taken. And hopefully on the other end of this host transition, I have the time to do that sort of stuff.
And we're very unhealthy. It should be stated.
Absolutely.
We don't live a particularly healthy lifestyle, right? Yeah. If like life is a balance, shift your weight kind of thing. There are shifts that can happen here where we can pursue other things that also make us happy in addition to YouTube and find ways of pursuing those. And those, make you a better rounded person, but can also make you better at business.
Are you talking about
the honesty?
Are you talking about fun?
What?
Right. Well, actually, we're talking about happiness.
Oh, so the other thing.
No, and I think this is Stephanie read this very influential blog
a long time ago.
long time ago, and
it unbelievably impactful on my whole life. Are you ready for it? No one. I don't think anyone actually likes this when I tell this story. So sorry in advance.
No, I think I like it. I like
I'm
this story.
prepared to be
underwhelmed.
and
Yeah,
uninterested.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I can tell the story, and then maybe it'll be better.
Do you know that that's happened? Okay, so
Okay. You tell the story, then you tell the story,
Okay,
and we'll choose the best one.
competition.
We'll
That's
choose
fine.
the best one.
No, that's what Matthew is doing is a callback to many moments that we've had, but one moment in particular that always like burns into our memory from VidCon, where this was when I was not. It wasn't known that I was helping with the channels, that I was part of the business. It was back in the days when there was one channel, one face, and YouTube only invited one person to everything, because it was like, you can't be a YouTuber and have anyone else work with you ever. But we were at VidCon. We were talking to an industry bigwig, and I said something to them and received absolutely zero acknowledgement. Like, it was as if I didn't say it. And then a couple minutes later, they turned to Matthew, and Matthew knew that I had just said this thing. We were standing next to each other. It wasn't that hard to hear me. And he said the exact same words, literally the exact same sentence. And the guy was like, whoa, what an amazing idea. That was
amazing.
incredible.
That was a great idea.
That was amazing. Yeah. And so we have a running joke sort of about this instance.
Understood.
A good solid 10 years later.
Yeah. So anyway, tell me your story.
Okay. So the opposite of happiness, what is it? What's the opposite of happiness?
Sadness.
You would think, right?
Wrong. You've been lying to me.
Unhappiness, whatever.
It is, it feels like this moment right now.
Oh no, that's the impression that we've left them with.
I mean, this is why people don't like the stories. I wouldn't have quizzed them and made them feel bad about an impossible question.
I feel like I got set up.
Yeah, you were. I'm sorry.
So this idea posits that the opposite of happiness is not unhappiness. The opposite of happiness is interestingness. And it comes from a study that was done in the early 2000s where you interview a bunch of people who, some of them have really high-powered jobs where they're traveling a lot. They have like unbelievably hectic, busy lives. And some people have like very, very predictable like suburban schedules where they don't do very much and they live in these like sort of small towns and stuff like that. You interview these two sets of people. The people with the really high-powered careers who are going and coming all the time, they describe their lives as extremely interesting and mostly unhappy. And you look at the other set of people who have a very predictable life. They have a very normal, average kind of existence. They describe their life as not very interesting, but pretty darn happy. And so you have this spectrum that doesn't go from happiness to unhappiness. It goes from happiness to interestingness. And the more interesting your life gets and intense and crazy, and you recognize like, wow, my life is super interesting right now, but most of the time on a day-to-day basis, you are not very happy. Oh. And it's about this idea of where do you want to sit between the spectrum of happiness and interestingness at different points in your life. And we have pushed ourselves for the last 10, 13 years so far in the direction of interestingness. And on a day-to-day basis, we're like so stressed out most of the time, right? And at this point, we can move somewhere else toward the happiness end of that spectrum, right? Maybe a little bit less interesting on a day-to-day basis, but maybe a bit happier.
I love that. And I think you did a great job.
You're not going to top it.
Telling that story.
I don't think I can replicate that. That was
think you
perfect.
can.
No.
Yeah. But that essentially suggests that happiness is connected to simplicity, right?
It is, right? And I think that like it takes a lot to realize that. And I don't know. I wasn't someone who believed that. I was like, yeah, you get out there, you do all this amazing stuff and you're going to feel so satisfied and accomplished. And you do. And that's the thing. I think I feel really satisfied and accomplished with a lot of the things that we've done. But I think about my happiest moments and they're absolutely some of the simplest.
They're super simple.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like even take the example of a sports car, right? Like a high-end, super powered sports car. All of a sudden, you have to worry about the maintenance of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You have to worry about like, oh man, if I take it to the stores, like I need to park it far away because someone might dent it. The streets are too bumpy, and so it like might bump. The car insurance is expensive. Like I have to run the engine at a certain rate because the engine doesn't function on like 25 per hour mile per hour roads. Like there's a lot of stresses that come with the interesting and exciting thing of having a sports car, right? Whereas, if you simplify it and go with just kind of like the happy option of like, hey, I have a car that runs well and I don't have to do extra maintenance for it. It's totally fine. That's perfect. Like there is a beauty in the elegance and simplicity of normal everyday life that allows you to put away a lot of those stressors that come with being interesting and pursuing an interesting lifestyle that allow you to just have happiness.
In other words, mo money, mo problems.
Mo problems.
Yeah, wise man once said.
Right.
Wise man once
You
said.
know who's really good with this is Ryan Trahan.
Mhm.
I always say if there was one YouTuber I could be, it's Ryan Trahan.
Yeah.
Like I think he has
Good choice.
found
It's a great choice.
this amazing space of simplicity. He has a small team.
Yep.
Oftentimes he's filming with just himself and an iPhone.
Mhm.
He can, I remember I think he told us he edited a video on the plane ride back from shooting the video with his editor, Zach. And like, it's a very simple setup they
Yeah.
have now. And he's been able to excel
Yep.
in that simplicity. And I really admire him in the way that he's operated in a world of pretty complex desires on YouTube now, right? Like YouTube has become a place of complex desires.
Yes.
And I'm curious your perspective. I know you've talked a lot about the eras of YouTube and just this premise of being a YouTube creator and what it means in 2024 is so different than what it used to be. And I think these are connected conversations, the conversation around like interestingness and happiness and simplicity.
Yeah.
So I'm curious your perspective on YouTube today from the elder statesman vantage point.
statesman.
Yeah.
Do you want to adjust your cravat?
Oh, yes. No, I think we're in an interesting era for a lot of reasons, right? We are definitely at the turning point of a new generation of YouTube. Absolutely 100%. And it's on account of two things, right? I think Ryan Trahan represents a lot of what this new generation is, which is a swinging of the pendulum back. For the last 3 years or so, everyone's talking about the Mr. Beastification of YouTube. I think, it wasn't just Mr. Beast. There were a lot of other factors, but he was definitely like the point of the spear in a lot of that, where productions are bigger, expenses are higher. We did a video about this towards the end of last year about the era of excess.
Yeah.
Everything has to be the biggest, the most. I did everything, right? And Ryan Trahan represents that, but to the complete other end, which is I took it down to a penny. I did this simple thing, and it is that simplicity. And I think what you're seeing is kind of that swinging of the pendulum back towards embracing that sort of simplicity, that relatability, that human connection that really was foundational to the success of early YouTube in a lot of ways. Concurrent to that, I think you have, again, I've made passing mentions of it, but that the role of shorts on YouTube and the influence of TikTok on audience attention spans and production value, right? Where as shorts continue to take over more and more of the feed, and as TikTok continues to take up more and more of audience attention, people are loyal to the platforms rather than individual creators.
Yep.
When everything is just let me scroll. Haha, that was a funny video. Move on to the next one. You don't appreciate who was the person who actually made it, right? Like when you talk to people about TikTok, they're like, "Oh, did you see that funny TikTok where
the guy did this?"
Yeah, the guy did
but
this.
who was the guy? Like,
who was the
no
guy?
one
And they're
knows.
like, "Oh, I forget what his name was." And they have to maybe he saved it. They have to dig back through it,
Or they can never find it again.
or it's just gone.
For me, I'm like, I can never find that again.
right.
I will never see this.
That's exactly right. And so everything is this like passive watch experience where you're loyal to a platform, you're loyal to the feed, but you're not loyal to a creator. And it's very hard for a creator to kind of like put their stamp on that video and stand out from that crowd, right?
You were talking to somebody else. I think it was a roundtable video that you guys did before the
Streamies.
It
streamies.
was Michelle Carre and
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
right?
and a bunch of other people who were talking about how it's really hard to how they see a lot of trending videos from this past year, but not a lot of exceptionally growing creators. There was a comment like that
Zach
really
was in that one too.
there was
we
a
had
comment
a
that really
conversation
resonated about that.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I think that's a great way of putting it, where yes, lots and lots of trending videos, an individual video that's like 200 million views, and not as many of those like creators, especially, this sounds like a bad way to put this, but like middle class creators, but like creators who are on the rise or mid-tier creators, that's us.
That's an inside joke that we're probably gonna have to cut.
I know.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Too much context.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, do I explain this? Well,
Call back to a 2018 video.
Don't worry about it.
But that chunk of creators in there who again have small teams who aren't interested in necessarily being everything for everyone, but are interested in kind of staying in their lane and doing a great job of it. I'm seeing less of those, or like just maybe not as many as I would have expected.
Totally.
And I think that comment really summed it up really well.
People are chasing that, the big video, like in the video conversation of the week, and maybe overlooking the like, what does this look like in 3 years? Like, what is like we talked about this before we started recording, but we always think about formats on a 52-week cycle. Like, what does 52 weeks of this look like? I think but I do think it's swinging back. There's a lot of lo-fi kind of stuff working, which is interesting. It's not necessarily that it's taking over.
Right.
But there's stuff working that's lower fi, and even long form podcasting is something that's interesting. People are, I just want to see what happened in the room.
Yeah, smart to be in that
it's either super short or super long.
Right.
You know, but that kind of like middle era is tough to come by at this point for sure.
Is there anything that you would do to change YouTube to make it a better place for creators?
To make it better, I would have broken out Shorts into its own separate viewing experience, to be honest.
Into a separate app.
Yeah, into a separate app. Yeah. I think you are trying to create two different watch experiences on the same platform, and the way they operate are fundamentally different from each other. One is a passive scroll that gives you those quick hits of dopamine and are funny, and it's like good discoverability for a lot of smaller tier creators, and it's
bigger tier
or bigger tier creators. Yeah, or anyone.
Just a lot of discoverability.
No, my concern is always just that it threatens the viewing behavior.
Correct.
And the viewing behavior of YouTube is so unique to YouTube.
Exactly. Well, and people underestimate the value of the channel page, where it really, when you break it down, YouTube is a large website with a lot of smaller websites on it, and those smaller websites are called YouTube channel pages. And so when I go to look for a Colin and Samir video, I type in Colin and Samir. I know who you are. I know what you are. I recognize your thumbnail. Your brand is everywhere. Your brand is in the title. Your brand is how you thumbnail. Your brand is, the content that I'm getting. And so I, like, everywhere you go on YouTube proper, like long form YouTube, that brand exists. In Shorts and in any sort of feed-based thing on TikTok either, there is no thumbnail. The title is hidden off to the corner. Your brand logo is off in the corner.
I better recognize your face and your microphones. And that's what I've got, basically.
I mean, even if you look at VidCon from this past year, as you looked around the Creator Hotel, the amount of people in kind of over-the-top, brightly colored, wacky outfits was
Did
through
you guys
the roof.
see this too?
Did you notice that?
That's interesting. I mainly just noticed that we talked to Hank about this, but like someone would come up to us and say hello and say they liked our stuff and be like, oh, thanks so much. And then we'd be like, well, and what do you do? And they're like, oh, we're a TikTok creator. Oh, okay, cool. And then we'd look them up and they have like 15 million followers. And you were like,
right.
That was the crazy thing, was like,
it's nuts.
Everyone was famous and no one was famous.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like it was like, and fans are creators and creators are fans, and everyone was just everything.
Right.
And I was like, VidCon used to be, there's a couple of celebrity creators and everyone else is there as a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But it's very hard to stand out.
The wacky outfits.
To the point of the wacky outfits. Yeah. No, I think this is worth talking about.
Well, and I think, and the reason why, or at least our game theory, I had to do it at least once. I'm so sorry.
Whenever you say that for the rest of your life, huh?
Constant. Yeah.
You have to do the bit to yourself.
I am legally required to do it. I'm so sorry.
X
And then apologize immediately
and then
after.
You have to pay a royalty.
Royalties back to Lunar X, corporate overlord Lunar X. No, but it's one of those things where our theory is the reason why the Creator Hotel looks so different this past year is because you need a visual thing to stand out immediately. As you're scrolling through, it's like, oh, that's the person who dresses like they're from Good Burger, or oh, that's the person with like the neon green tutus or whatever. And I don't necessarily know who you are, but I immediately, within that split second of me flipping, I have that moment of visual recognition because there is no thumbnail. It's whatever the first frame of your video is. There is none of those other branding things that you trust on YouTube. And so for me, if I were to make that one small change to YouTube, which isn't that small of a change, but I would have broken the two out and still have them talk back and forth to each other in some way, be able to link between one app and the other app, or maybe there's long form connections there somewhere, but do it in two separate watch experiences where the screen real estate of one isn't cannibalizing the screen real estate of another one.
I think they're actually maybe planning for the mega, like the very long term of connected TV versus mobile.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Because we've said this before, but they have us on both at one time.
Sure.
The amount of people who are probably watching connected TV and also scrolling shorts, that means now you just doubled your watch time
right.
across two products, right? And so that could still happen if it was a separate app, but I imagine it would be much more challenging to bring people over to that other app.
Oh, no.
Right? Like it's just...
I mean, it would be, but
I understand the case from them.
Oh, sure.
No, I understand. I understand why they did it, and I also. And here's the thing: I think we have like a good amount of faith in YouTube. Like we're like fans of the platform. We like YouTube,
and it sustained us, and it allowed us all to build careers for over a decade.
100%,
exactly.
Which is pretty substantial.
Yes,
I think where you get into some trouble is when there's so much going on the back end of YouTube, and YouTube doesn't understand it. Right? I think there are a lot of unintended consequences that happen when YouTube tests things. And the only way to test them, a lot of times, this is not their fault, but the only way to test them is by using people's real channels and real income and real employees, right? And if they've made a miscalculation and if they haven't really thought through how the shorts feed actually cannibalizes long form or vice versa or whatever, there are unintended consequences and there are fallout, but those are real people that are in the fallout, right?
Well, and I think there might have been a case of correlation versus causation with YouTube in a lot of ways. So obviously Shorts was a very strong reaction to TikTok, right? Where like, oh man, TikTok's eating our lunch. TikTok's the new hip thing and all the kids are on TikTok. And YouTube is now the old man in the room. Just like YouTube swooped in and took the audience away from traditional media, here's TikTok in that same role now with old man YouTube, right? And I think they saw that and panicked and they're like, how do we get the young people to make YouTube hip again? How do we get the
the youth?
Yeah, how do we get how do we get the youth onto our platform, right? But I think what they underestimated was the reason why TikTok was so exciting for these people. It wasn't necessarily 1-minute videos. It wasn't necessarily like a vertical scroll or things like that. What it really was a lower barrier to entry.
Of course.
It was that idea of, in order to find success on the platform, it could just be me on my phone, and I don't need this big production where I buy every single Barbie dream house and then review it for the next hour.
Which is a great video, by the way.
Which Hopescope was a fantastic video, but also like it's difficult for a small aspiring creator to do, right? I don't have a big team. Or even as a viewer, right? If I'm a kid in school who wants to watch a digital video, I don't have a half hour to 45 minutes to watch or 3 hours to watch a Colin and Samir podcast, right?
I don't.
But I have
how's
a
your
minute.
middle school demographic? Is it pretty good?
This has got to be big in middle school.
Huge. We're popping off, boys. Let's go between Mrs. Smith's geometry class. But it's one of those things where the platform and the algorithm, because it was so optimized for long form satisfaction, long time watch time, all of that stuff, you lost a lot of what founded YouTube in the first place, which was short popcorn viewing videos, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes that you could watch and share easily. And
so there was totally an open space in the market for that. And hey,
and
TikTok did a great job of finding it.
Isn't it funny that they just announced 30-minute upload time on TikTok?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, because everybody's got to go.
Right.
Everybody's got to smush in.
Everyone has to steal each other's
thing.
Well,
exactly.
because also like, I mean, the clock is no pun intended. The clock is ticking on TikTok in terms of making creators money through something other than brand deals, right?
I think you intended that joke. I think that pun was intended. I'm just calling Stephanie out on this.
Anyway.
I think that was an intended pun.
So in a year like 2023, right? I think Reed, again, we saw the Night letter that went out at the end of 2022 being like, hey guys, buckle up, don't buy the Lambos next year. It's going to be a rough ride. And we're expecting brand deals to be harder to get in 2023. And lo and behold, they were, generally a bit harder to get, not in every vertical, right?
Yeah.
But there was some uncertainty in the marketplace, right? And I think Night has made no bones about this. When they sent out that letter, they were like, this
You're talking
isn't
about Night Media run by Reed, who manages Mr. Beast.
Sorry.
Yes. I just want the context.
The context for this. So when managers in the space have been concerned about the financial stability of creators this year in general, those concerns haven't necessarily been targeted at operations like ours or like yours.
Right.
They've been targeted at short form creators and TikTokers who rely very heavily on brand integrations. And if those go away, it's like one revenue stream, right? One.
Single revenue stream.
Single.
creators.
And maybe you have merch. Maybe you have a product.
But
Maybe if
probably
you're the
not.
D'Amelios,
Yeah,
but probably not.
Probably not.
If it's just sponsorships and there's one bad year, that can crush you. And so TikTok is in this position where they know that. And yeah, of course they're going to try and create longer form opportunities for people to bring in real ad revenue, right? And now they've got Twitter to contend with, I guess.
Where do you think, okay, do you guys watch sports?
Every once in a while, we dabble.
Okay.
We dabble.
Yeah.
Do you know who
Olympics
Derek
comes
Fisher
on every
is?
4 years.
Derek Fisher.
Yeah.
I've heard the name. Please
Old
refresh
school Los Angeles Lakers player.
Okay,
that I
yes.
grew up watching.
Yeah.
He became the head of the NBA Players
Okay,
Association,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like essentially the Players Union.
Sure.
I've been very curious as this crop starts to age up.
Yeah.
What happens to someone or people like you guys? Like, do you become the Derek Fishers of YouTube, right? Because you have a lot of perspective.
Sure.
I remember listening to one of your videos. I don't remember, maybe it was about shorts or maybe it was about the $1.7 million loss
Sure.
when you're talking about Defy.
Yeah.
And I was like, you speak with a kind of a political cadence at times. And I was like,
My
is there-
fellow influencer.
Yeah. Is there a world where you where do we all net out? Like, is there there's been attempts at creator unions. I don't believe those can work because I don't think we are talented in the same way, or we're not
talented. Full stop.
Yeah.
no, right,
But
sure.
we're just not
Just a bunch of
actors.
hacks in here.
Would you ever go into YouTube and work at does one of us become the CEO of YouTube?
Honestly, it is one of those things that as we look towards what is, next steps for us, if there is that period of time where it's hey, Theorist is off to college and we have empty nest syndrome and we want to do something else, let's work on another project. There's always been talks about us, doing that. Either, hey, maybe we do want to step in at YouTube, or maybe we do want to work on some product. Our thing has always been try to help uplift other creators and try to help make digital media a more viable, accepted, respected platform, because we all see it, right? We all are, the creators and the brands of the future, and we are the production studios of now, and it still boggles my mind that traditional media refuses to acknowledge that and to
that
have
tide's
those
starting to change.
because
it has to.
because they got nothing else to talk about, right?
because
They
it has
have to.
Yeah.
But if instead of being scared of that, there should be someone or people to kind of help mitigate those sorts of things. So for us, it was very important during my tenure as host of the channels to serve as kind of an elder statesman or as a state of the union of YouTube to equip creators with the knowledge that they needed and to talk to YouTube who might be listening and creators who are listening about hey, this is the ecosystem as it currently exists.
We get a lot of emails from YouTube employees after a meta video goes up. After we write a video where Matthew rants on the couch for 15 minutes.
Yep.
We get a lot of emails from YouTube being we passed that around. Everybody watched that over here, and it was really interesting. We know that stuff gets seen, and that's so cool.
That's
how
really
cool
cool.
is that?
Yeah.
I know for a fact that Susan Wojcicki saw most of the meta videos that we did, and or her assistant did a very good job of informing her, right? Whatever. And that's so cool. And it would be a shame to lose that entirely or to just take a step so far back that we don't get to participate in any of that. We're already actually in talking about creator advocacy at the at the state and national level to create business parity for YouTubers, to make sure that they have the same rights as other media companies, the same tax breaks, the same employment laws, because a lot of that stuff has been left in this weird gray area because no one has taken the time to articulate it to, people who are real decision makers in policy and things like that. And we're getting to that point in the industry where that stuff is now possible. And yeah, we're actually we've already been in meetings about that for the last year to talk about being effective voices in that space. And it's pretty cool. And other than that, I think creator advocacy is it's awesome, right? How fortunate do we have to be in life in general to be in a position where we're okay, money is not our most limited resource at this point. And once we get a little bit more time freed up on the background, then time is not a super, super limited resource in the way that it is right now. And then we can turn our attention to be like, well, if we have that kind of freedom, we should be advocating for other people to have it too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, how awesome is that? What an incredible
awesome.
privilege.
Yeah. This is not really where we are in the conversation, but can I ask just a data question?
Sure.
Just about the type of data we should care about. You have this great quote that I pulled that was about explicit versus implicit data.
Yeah.
And that YouTube has so much more implicit data right now. They don't need you to like a video. They don't need you to subscribe.
Yeah.
They can understand your behavior without you having to take an action.
Yes. 100%.
I thought that was really interesting. And I'm just curious for creators in general, like data has become a big conversation. And we have a lot of data at our fingertips. What do you think creators need to care about when it comes to data?
I would say, I mean, it's interesting because over the course of this past year, the algorithm has shifted probably every 2 to 3 months as YouTube has tried to figure out where shorts fit in and what the right cadence is there. So there have been a lot of metrics that have been shifting and pivoting, and we've seen that reflected in the data over the course of the last year.
That data comes from the fact that we've had a lot of discussions about that particular quote, comes from the idea that we've had a lot of conversations about subscribers not being a metric to look at.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So subscribership is not something that YouTube needs anymore. I don't think. I think it's just there so that people can click a button and have a bookmark and click play buttons.
But at the end of the day, I mean, like priority number one is average views per video. So that way you can see like, hey, it wasn't just a one-off, but it was I'm building a sustained audience. And even though the next video might not have done well as the one that popped off, did I gain more, not subscribers, did I gain more regular viewers off of that?
And are you looking at returning viewers versus new viewers?
Yes, exactly.
In that average views per video.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're like VPV 30 views per video over the last 30 days, over the last 90 days. What we encourage a lot of our team to do, anyone who's in the data regularly, is take a close look at what's happening right now and then very regularly, like almost with every upload, zoom out. And remember, to your point earlier, you're planning a 365 day a year programming cycle. Zoom out. Where are you in that cycle, right? And if you're not understanding the wider context of your data, you're missing the opportunities to actually spot the trends, right?
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that our team, it wasn't intuitive for them to necessarily pick up immediately because they were very focused on how did this week's video do? And we're like, well, okay, this one did fine, I guess, but without understanding how the last 10 videos did, you don't really understand how this one did. And if you don't know how we're trending for the year, you don't know how this video did either.
Well,
right?
and I think, so on one hand, it's that zoom out mentality, but I would actually counter and say, go into each piece of content with a goal and with a purpose, a KPI, a KPER for your KPI. It's this idea of
KPI means for the young.
Oh yes,
for the youth.
Your key performance indicator.
Yeah.
Yes,
like your goal.
What are you tracking?
What's your goal?
Yeah, man, we're dropping all the words here, but yeah. So what is your goal? Because I think a lot of creators just upload videos with a vague idea. It's going to do well.
Yeah.
Right. It will get views. Or maybe it'll monetize. And what we found is that no one piece of content can do all of those things, right? It can't be satisfying to subscribers and get you new viewers and also get a lot of watch time, but also maximize CPMs and this and that. Different pieces of content work differently all the time. And so what we always recommend is if you're, take our channel, for instance, we have our wheelhouse franchises of like indie horror, on Game Theory, but maybe this week we're going to cover Fortnite because it's trendy and it's not in our audience's wheelhouse. Let's see how many new viewers. This is a play for new viewers. We want to bring more new viewers onto this video because it is not in our existing audience's wheelhouse. And so we do it, and then we look at see how many new viewers came over off of that video and also how many subscribers we got off that video. It's an antiquated metric, but it is a metric that is relevant for that specific video. And then you go to like, hey, we want this video to be to kind of maximize watch time. The last couple of videos have been short. We want something that's a little bit more narrative. We're going to stretch the retention time. Let's get people to watch longer sessions. Let's look at that retention time graph and let's see where the peaks and valleys were. Or hey, we wanted to run an experiment in the middle where we told people to go back and rewatch. Like, did that work? How did that work? And so for us, each video is an opportunity to experiment and to achieve something new with your channel. And it's an opportunity to learn. And that over the course of 13 years, we have done that over and over and over again, week over week over week over week, 44 videos a week or whatever from a month. And by doing that, you get such control and such power over your programming and over your content that you then have a really good sense of, hey, if I need an audience booster, I need to dip into this type of content. Or if I need to get people to click on that link at the end of the video or click on a sponsor link or whatever, I know based on looking at the data and the tests that I've explicitly run that is, I need to say X, Y, and Z, and I need to frame it in this way.
Yeah, but the point is that you can't test everything on one video, and one video can't achieve everything. You can't have an experimental video that also activates the wheelhouse audience and drives subscribership, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There has to be, you can only measure a video's success if you know what the goal of the video is, right? If you don't have an end in mind, you don't know how you're going to get there or if you've gotten there.
Yep.
And it's not always just 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10.
Right, exactly.
No, I think that's, and the people we know, I'd be curious about the people you've interviewed. The people we know are very split on that as the first thing you see when you log into analytics, right?
Yeah.
Is the ranking. Because even for channels like ours, that can sometimes be very misleading. If we're intentionally doing an experimental episode, we know that that's not going to be the biggest view getter, but that wasn't the point because that's not what we're testing.
Yeah.
And so that's not a relevant thing to see, but it is hurtful to be like, oh, 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a gut punch.
Yeah, it's
Right,
a gut
sure.
punch. And so we know people who are like, oh, that's really helpful. And I think for the most part, we find it really pretty helpful, but we know people who hate it because if they're not setting out to necessarily get the most views on every video and that's the only thing they're testing, then it totally throws your game off, right?
Yeah, for us,
we've had 2 out of 10s that 60 days later way underperform
Right,
in
absolutely.
relation to what was maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, it's just AVD.
Yep.
Because what we're making is extreme long form.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
like when we see an AVD in the 40 to 60 minute range, we're like, oh, people are in.
Yeah, people like it. Yep.
Right? They like
Totally.
it. If you start to see it dip in the 30 minute or 20 minute, because we're pushing, 2 hours.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Who knows what we're pushing?
We've been
right
here
now.
all night.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I
It
have
is
no idea
actually
what the
Sunday.
sun is doing at this point, right?
So
I think my
Where are we
flight
at?
left like 5 hours ago.
You live here now.
are you guys flying out tonight?
No.
No,
Okay, good.
early to
I
like
was
4
we
a.m.
might
tomorrow.
have to
But
get
that's
you
fine.
out of here.
I'm just going to
No.
sleep under your table.
Yeah, I mean, we optimize for like watch
Oh, yeah,
time.
that's MatPat. We can't get him to leave.
Yeah.
Hi,
He's
Ryan.
been here since the recording.
Hey, Jimmy. Yeah. So this is my home now. But yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree. But I think it's a really good note to say that each video has a different purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay that not all of them are pegged at the same.
For me, I think when it comes to average view duration, the thing that I like looking at is the nuance of new viewers versus returning viewers and how the duration is for each of those, right? You would expect returning viewers to be slightly longer and new viewers to be slightly less just because that's how it works.
Yep.
But I like seeing what the delta is between those two because now all of a sudden, hey, if that new viewer was pretty darn close to where that returning viewer is, it means like I've gotten them. And I'm knowing how to speak to these new viewers in a way that's retaining them and likely converting them into someone who's going to follow us moving forward.
Those are people who will remember my brand.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Have you shot the final video?
Part of it.
Yeah, we
you
actually just came from shooting part of it yesterday.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it?
Does it involve pyrotechnics? Like how?
Oh,
how
it's gonna
how
be-
crazy are we getting?
kind of
here?
tricky, I think.
It's gonna be wild.
It's gonna be kind of a wacky one. I'm really excited about it. I think people who want to have a fun, quirky ending will not be disappointed.
Good.
I don't know if you want.
Good,
Do you want to?
good,
You can
good.
say as much as
No.
else as you want to.
No,
say
I think, the emotional sign off was the goodbye internet video.
Yep.
The fun celebratory sign off, that is a celebration of kind of the last 13 years of me hosting these channels. That is what's coming next. And I think it's going to be unexpected. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fan servicey. And I think people who tune in are going to have themselves a good time.
Wow, I can't wait.
I
to
can't
watch
wait
that
for that.
video.
Yeah.
That's great.
Uh-huh.
I do want to acknowledge that there are comps in traditional media for stuff like this, right? Where it's like whether it's late night hosts, right, or
The way we've likened it is actually the last season of a quarterback of a football team, right? So like if
That's true.
See, we
like
dabble with sports ball.
yeah,
No,
with that,
you're a
this is,
sportsman.
we're
Yeah.
gonna call sports ball.
Yeah.
So you get an announcement that like a QB is retiring, almost a full season right before they actually
true.
retire, right?
True.
Yeah.
And so that last season, and that's on purpose, right? The team wants you to tune in to all of, every game that person is in until they retire. And so we've kind of likened it to that. It's like, okay, we're going to give people like a season's worth of heads up. And yeah, it's 10 videos or 9 videos because we miscounted on all of the channels.
We didn't actually miscount. That was kind of the joke, but
I don't know. But sure.
Yeah.
Sure we didn't.
Jason on our team, who is our chief creative officer, he's very adamant in saying, we did not miscount. I fully anticipated that one to be the first of the theory.
Fine.
He was like, I can't believe you would say that. I'm like, it's fine, Jason. It's okay. But anyway, yes. So anyway, please continue.
So no, it was like, so that it's the last season, 10 episodes on each channel, right? But it's 40 episodes. So there's a whole season.
Yeah,
that's
a whole
right?
season.
And
But
you're
anyway.
making it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
Then we're at the Super Bowl. What
No,
were we going to say about
that's-
late night hosts? and
Oh,
stuff?
that's all I was saying is that there's comps. Like, I
there are
think
comps,
the
yes.
sports
Sports
team
one's
is
good.
is
I like
good
that.
because
Sports
like
ball.
the
Yeah.
team continues with a
Yeah.
new quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. New quarterback, new late night host, new
Yeah.
new doctor, if you're a Doctor Who fan, a Whovian.
Nope.
No. Okay, great. Cool.
Fine.
Quarterbacks then, yes. Yeah.
A lot of sports here.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Couple
Cool.
of jocks.
Sports theory is going to be a banger with you guys, let me tell you.
We could host. We could host.
Yeah.
Hey,
It could be us.
there you go.
It could be us.
We're in the market for hosts
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
the channels.
creative director. There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
I don't know what that does. So.
Right, who knows?
Damn it. This whole time.
I still don't know what that does. Yeah.
God, we have failed so mightily across the board.
Well, I'm very excited to see what comes next.
Thank you.
Again, I think like this is a moment that I think obviously you saw it across the whole platform where it almost was like everyone was ready to share something based on this, right? You gave a lot of people permission to even think in this direction. And I think, we've all in different ways in this era pioneered something new in media. And then specifically on the platform started to, there's a lot of these people who are on the Mount Rushmore who have pioneered things. And I think you've done it in many different ways, but I think this year you did it in a way that gave a lot of people permission to look at themselves and recognize which parts of this job they like, don't like, how they want to continue it, what's even possible. Yeah. Is it possible to retire? So thank you guys.
We'll see.
you.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, is it possible to retire? We're gonna find out.
We'll find
right?
out. Yeah,
I'm really
absolutely.
excited. I'm
Stay
just
tuned.
as excited to see as everyone else.
I mean, but it isn't. Like, you're not going to find out. I mean, it is easy. You can retire. You just stop.
It
You
depends how
stop.
many
You say you're
times
done.
retired. Tom Brady retired.
Sure,
Came
and then
back.
comes back, right? But you can always. I mean, it's up to you though whether you hit that upload button again, right, and
Yeah.
that publish button. No, but thank you. That means a
Yeah.
lot. Actually, that's like when I think about like, did we leave our mark, and were we a good role model for the future generations of creator? Like that, to me, is really important. It's been important for me to steward our audience through a chunk of their life and teach them something wacky about Mario being a sociopath or whatever, or a little something that got them through like a science test or whatever. But at the end of the day too, like I look at this industry and how privileged we have both been to be in the early days of it and to help shape it and pioneer it in a lot of different ways. And so to, like our hope is to have left this platform a little bit better as a result. So thank you for saying that. That means a lot.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah, of
All right,
course.
guys.
Cool.
Well,
Right.
where do people follow you personally now?
Just
Jeez.
nowhere.
God.
At this point. Isn't that
We have to
weird?
develop a social
That's a
presence.
wild
This is
one.
Okay,
odd.
right.
No,
I guess look at their Instagrams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'll
Please plug.
I'll plug Elon
something.
here.
Okay,
Follow me at MatPat GT on Twitter. That'll be or on X, I guess at this
yeah.
MatPatGT.
It's the same on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, I'm MatPat GT on all of them. So I
Okay.
probably have to lose the GT at this point, but yeah, that's it.
Amazing.
MatPat,
Yeah,
the end.
Cool.
Thank you guys.
In that way,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.